Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Cryptic Corpse. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious, where are you watching from, and what time is it in your part of the world? Now find your cozy spot and relax. My name is Vincent Carver. I'm 47 years old, and my left hand won't stop trembling when it's not busy. That's why I'm always touching the groove on my finger, where my wedding ring lived for 15 years. Feel it? Smooth in the middle, rough at the edges, like memories that wear down over time, but never completely disappear. I was an army surgeon once, good with a knife, steady hands. I saved lives, until I couldn't save the one that mattered most. Rebecca, my wife. I still feel her pulse stopping under my fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, silence. 1, 2, 3, 4, silence. I count that rhythm all day long. The silence between heartbeats is where I live now. There was a time when I felt like a miracle worker. I once saved conjoined twins during a surgery that lasted 14 hours straight. I remember feeling like God's hands were guiding mine, like I couldn't make a mistake even if I tried. When their mother cried with joy afterward, her tears felt like holy water on my tired face. That's what healing should feel like. Now I live in my grandfather's old cabin in the Great Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. He was famous around these parts, brewed moonshine that mountain folks swore could heal anything from toothaches to broken hearts. I guess medicine runs in our blood, just in different forms. These days, I practice surgery on deer carcasses I find in the woods. I carry them back to my cabin, lay them out on my kitchen table, and get to work. Trying to remember how it felt to heal before I learned how to kill. Before Rebecca, I can't help myself. When I see something broken, I need to fix it. The cabin's roof, fixed. The old generator, fixed. The cracked window, fixed. Can't stand to see broken things anymore. They remind me too much of Rebecca's torn womb, of our baby who never took a breath. Most folks would call a doctor if they sliced their hand open on a fishing hook. I just grab my fishing line and whiskey and stitch myself up. I can smell blood from 50 paces, track wounded animals through the forest just by scent. I know which plants around here heal and which ones kill. Sometimes I collect both. I used to be handsome, or so Rebecca told me. Now I'm just tall and thin, with grey hair that came too early. There are scars on my palms from holding scalpels too tight. People in town say I always smell like antiseptic, even though it's been years since I set foot in a hospital. The smell follows me like a ghost. Speaking of ghosts, I talk to Rebecca while I practice. Set up the deer on the table, get my instruments ready, and tell her about my day, like she's standing right there watching. See this incision, Becky, clean and straight. You'd be proud. She never answers, which scares me more than if she did. Every morning, I mark another day on my calendar with surgical precision. Then, I write detailed notes about the forest creatures I've observed. Sometimes, when I'm feeling particularly lost, I practice sutures on my own skin. Just small ones, on my forearm. The pain helps me focus. Lately, I've been wondering, is healing sometimes just another form of violence? When I cut into flesh to remove something harmful, am I saving or harming? Can you save someone to death? These questions keep me up at night, especially here in Cataract Falls Hollow, where the walls of the mountain seem to trap every sound. Every thought. This hollow is like a wound in the earth that never fully heals. The Cherokee were forced from these lands in 1838. Sometimes, after heavy rains, I find bone fragments in the creek bed. Small ones. Children's bones. I rebury them with the respect they deserve. I didn't choose this place. This place chose me. And now I can't leave, even if I wanted to. Something's happening here. Something that started with bone arrangements I found in the forest last week. Something that feels like a surgery I never agreed to. And the ice storm that hit yesterday has sealed the only road out. I watched my escape route disappear like Rebecca's vital signs, slowly, then all at once. Last night I couldn't sleep. The creak behind my cabin sounds different now. It used to be soothing, like gentle rain on a tin roof. Now it sounds like metal tools clinking against each other, like scalpels and forceps being arranged on a surgical tray. I got up to check if someone was outside. The moon was bright enough to see by, but the ice from the storm made everything look strange. The trees were covered in a thin layer that made them shine like polished bones. This hollow has a way of playing tricks on your mind. When you stand in just the right spot, you can hear your own heartbeat bouncing back at you from the cliff walls. But lately I've been hearing other heartbeats mixed with mine, faint pulses that don't match my rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, silence. But the silence never comes at the right time. I've been here 3 years, and I never noticed how much. This place looks like an operating room. The cliff walls curve around my cabin like the walls of a hospital theater. The creek cuts through the middle like a barrier, keeping me in place, just like straps on a surgical table. Even the way the sunlight filters through the trees reminds me of the harsh lights we used during procedures. Old man Jenkins from town told me once that the Cherokee believed this place was cursed. Bone eaters emerge when sacred ground bleeds, he said. I laughed it off back then. But 2 miles up the mountain, they started coal mining last year. The explosions shake my cabin sometimes. They're cutting into the earth like a surgeon cuts into flesh, and the scars they're leaving won't heal easily. From my front porch, I can see where they've stripped the mountainside bare. The exposed dirt looks raw, like skin peeled back during surgery. When it rains, red mud flows down into the creek, making it look like blood pumping from an open wound. The storm that hit us 2 days ago wasn't just bad luck. It felt personal somehow, like the mountain itself was trying to trap me here. The power lines snapped like arteries cut during surgery. My radio picks up nothing but static now. This morning, I heard Rebecca's voice so clearly I spun around expecting to see her standing there. "Doctor, am I going to die?" Her last words to me echoing off the walls of the hollow. I checked every room in the cabin, but I was alone. This place has a way of holding on to sounds, playing them back when you least expect it. I decided to hike up to the waterfall to clear my head. The path was slippery from the ice, but I needed to get out of the cabin. About halfway there, I stopped dead in my tracks. Someone, or something, had arranged a pile of animal bones on a flat rock beside the trail. But this wasn't some random pile. The bones were laid out in a perfect anatomical diagram of a human hand. Each bone in exactly the right place, like a page torn from one of my old medical textbooks. The finger bones were lined up with painful precision. The wrist bones formed a perfect curve. "Hello?" I called out. "Anyone there?" My voice bounced back at me from the cliff walls, distorted into something that didn't sound human. I told myself it was probably just some local kids playing a prank, or maybe another doctor lives nearby. But I know every face within 10 miles of here, and none of them have the knowledge to arrange bones like that. I took a picture with my phone and continued toward the waterfall. But I found 3 more bone arrangements along the way. A foot, a spine, a rib cage. Each one more detailed than the last, each one looking like it had been set up by someone who knew human anatomy as well as I did. By the time I reached the waterfall, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. The falling water sounded like whispers now, like someone reciting medical terms I hadn't used in years. I turned to head back to the cabin when I noticed something strange about my shadow on the rock face. It seemed wrong somehow, too thin in places, like parts of it were missing. That's when I felt it, a cold touch on my back, right along my spine. Not like a hand, more like cold, metal, like a scalpel tracing the line of my vertebrae. I ran all the way back to the cabin, slipping on ice, scratching my hands on frozen branches. Inside, I locked the door and windows, checked every room twice. Nothing was out of place, except for one thing. My medical journal was open on the kitchen table. I always write in English, with careful, precise handwriting, but the last page was filled with symbols I didn't recognize. They looked like Cherokee writing, but somehow I understood what they meant. They were describing a surgical procedure I'd never learned, a way to remove bones without breaking the skin. Something is watching me, learning from me, and I'm starting. To think the coal mining has woken up something that was meant to stay buried in these mountains. It's been 5 days since I found those bone arrangements. Things have gotten worse. Yesterday morning, I found a deer at the edge of my property. At first glance, it looked normal, but when I got closer, I saw that something was very wrong. Its front leg had been changed. The bones inside weren't deer bones anymore. They were human arm bones. I know what human bones look like. I've seen enough of them in my career. These were definitely human, but somehow they were inside the deer, with the skin healed perfectly around them. No scars, no sign of how they got there. I took out my knife and examined the leg. Whoever, whatever did this knew exactly what they were doing. The bones were connected to tendons and muscles, just like they should be. Perfect surgical work, better than anything I could do. Later that day, I found a squirrel with bird wing bones and a raccoon with what looked like fish bones in its tail. Nature's anatomy was being corrected, changed, by someone who understood surgery. Last night, I woke up at exactly 3:13 a.m., the same time Rebecca died on my operating table. Something was in my room. I could feel it watching me. The air felt thick, like in an operating room when the air conditioning stops working. "Who's there?" I whispered. No answer, but I heard a faint clicking sound, like bone touching bone. I reached for the flashlight I keep by my bed. When I turned it on, the beam caught something tall standing in the corner. For a split second I saw it, a figure that had to be at least 12 feet tall, its body like a skeleton but not quite human. It wore what looked like an old leather pouch around its neck, its skull. I don't want to write what I saw, but I have to. The skull looked like my grandfather's. I'd recognize that crooked jaw anywhere. But the eyes in the sockets were alive. They were my eyes, looking back at me. I blinked, and it was gone. The corner was empty, just shadows. This morning, I found my medical journals scattered on the floor. Every page, with a surgical diagram, had been corrected. New procedures written in the margins, in those same Cherokee symbols. But I could understand them now, like the knowledge was being poured directly into my brain. They described how to perform impossible surgeries, how to remove bones while leaving, skin intact, how to replace one creature's bones with another's, how to keep a patient conscious during procedures that should kill them from pain alone. I went to the bathroom to splash water on my face. In the mirror, my shadow looked wrong again. Parts of it were missing, like pieces had been cut out with perfect precision, and I felt a strange phantom pain in those exact spots. My left shoulder, blade, 3 ribs on my right side, 2 fingers on my left hand that weren't really gone. I spent the day boarding up the windows. Not that it would help. Whatever this thing is, it doesn't need doors or windows. It moves through the cabin like it belongs here, like it's lived here longer than I have. Around sunset, I heard screaming from the direction of the old mining road. I grabbed my first aid kit and ran outside. About half a mile from my cabin, I found a man lying on the ground. Jake Brennan, one of the coal miners. I recognized his face. "Help me, Doc," he gasped when he saw me. "Something's wrong. Can't feel my legs." I knelt beside him and checked his pulse. Strong but racing. No visible injuries, no blood. I helped him sit up, and that's when I noticed. His shirt hung oddly on his back, like there was nothing underneath to support it. "Jake, can you lean forward for me?" He tried, but his body just sort of collapsed like a tent without poles. I can't, Doc. Something's missing. I lifted his shirt. His skin was intact, not a mark on it. But underneath, where his spine should have been, there was nothing, just empty space. His spine was gone, but there was no wound, no scar, nothing to show how it had been removed. "Make the pain stop," he whispered. The same words Rebecca had used. I carried him back to my cabin. He died before I could do anything to help. His last breath rattled out of him like wind through an empty cave. I should have called the police, should have reported it. But the phone lines were still down from the storm, and my cell had no signal. And honestly, what would I have said? That someone performed impossible surgery on a coal miner, removing his entire spine without breaking the skin. I buried Jake behind my cabin, next to where I rebury the Cherokee bones I find. As I dug, I felt eyes on me from the forest. Not animal eyes, something that understood what I was doing, something that approved. That night, I barricaded myself in the bathroom, the smallest room in the cabin, with only one way in. I took my surgical kit, a flashlight, and a hunting knife. I sat with my back against the door and waited. Around midnight, I heard something moving in the cabin. Heavy footsteps, but also a sound like bones scraping together. It moved through each room slowly, deliberately, opening drawers, turning pages in my books, learning. Then it stopped outside the bathroom door. I held my breath. The doorknob turned, but the chair I'd propped under it held. A voice came through the door. Not human. It sounded like dry bones being rubbed together, but somehow forming words. "Healer who harms," it said. "I have come to fix you." "What are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I am Talking Crow. I remove what hurts." "I don't need fixing," I said, a dry laugh like twigs snapping. "Your guilt bones are heavy. I will take them, make you light again." "Stay away from me," I warned, gripping my knife. "Too late, healer who harms. I have already begun." A bony finger pushed through the crack under the door, much too long and thin to be human. It pointed at me, then at my shadow on the wall, and that's when I saw it. My shadow was changing again. Parts of it were disappearing like someone was performing surgery on it. And with each piece that vanished, I felt a deep, cold pain inside. My body, it was removing my bones, one by one, starting with my shadow. I must have passed out from the pain. When I woke up, sunlight was streaming through the bathroom window. My body felt normal again, but something was different. I felt lighter somehow, like parts of me were missing, not physical parts, but something deeper. I unlocked the bathroom door carefully. The cabin was empty, but it had been searched. My medical books were arranged in a perfect circle on the kitchen floor. My surgical tools had been laid out on the table in order of size, from smallest to largest. On my kitchen wall, something, had drawn a perfect human skeleton using what looked like charcoal. Next to it was written in crude letters, "Your pain next." I needed to get out of this hollow. The ice from the storm had started to melt, so maybe the road was clear now. I packed a bag quickly, food, water, my knife, matches. As I headed for the door, I heard moaning from outside. I looked out the window and saw a woman lying in my yard, Margaret Donovan, a hiker who passed through these parts a few times a year. I'd treated her sprained ankle last summer. I ran outside to help her. She was conscious but pale as a sheet. "Vincent," she gasped when she saw me. "Thank God, something attacked me on the trail. I can't feel my legs." I knelt beside her. Her hiking pants were intact, no blood, no visible wound. But when I touched her legs, they felt wrong. Soft, like bags of fluid with nothing solid inside. "What happened?" I asked, already fearing the answer. "I was setting up camp when I heard something moving around my tent," she said. "Thought it was a bear. I went out to check and saw, I can't describe it, tall, like a skeleton, but not. It had your grandfather's face, Vincent. How is that possible?" I've seen his picture in your cabin. I helped her inside and laid her on the couch. Her legs were useless now, the bones completely gone, but the skin unbroken, just like Jake. It spoke to me, she continued. Said it was removing what hurts. Said I'd been walking too long, that my leg bones were tired. It touched me and I felt cold all through my body. Then my legs just collapsed. I gave her water and pain medicine, though I wasn't sure it would help. This kind of injury wasn't in any medical textbook. It said it was coming back for you, she whispered. Said you needed the most healing of all. I tried to keep her comfortable, but by evening the damage had spread. Whatever had removed her leg bones was continuing its work inside her body, moving upward. It doesn't hurt anymore, she said, her voice getting weaker. I just feel empty. She died around midnight. I buried her next to Jake. 2 graves in 2 days, and I knew there would be more. The next morning, I found Deputy Tom Mitchell's patrol car at the end of my driveway. The driver's door was open, the radio squawking with static. Tom was slumped over the steering wheel. At first, I thought he was just unconscious, but when I pulled him back, I saw that the top of his head had been opened, like the skull cap removed during brain surgery. His brain was exposed to the air but undamaged. His eyes were open, aware. Can't move, he slurred, cold inside my head. I knew I couldn't save him. The exposure would kill him soon if shock didn't first. It was like a medical school demonstration, a perfect removal of the skull cap without damaging the brain beneath. It kept talking about you, Doc, Tom said. Said it needed to practice. Said I was just a warm-up for the real patient. Tom died in my arms, his last breath fogging the cold air. 3 deaths now, all connected to me. I was putting his body in the trunk of his car. I couldn't dig another grave so soon when I heard a vehicle coming up the road. My brother Robert's old pickup truck appeared through the trees. He wasn't due to visit for months. I waved frantically for him to turn around, to get away while he could, but he pulled up beside me, smiling as he got out. "Surprise visit, Vince," he called. "Phone lines are still down from the storm, so I thought I'd check on you." His smile faded when he saw the blood on my hands from moving Tom's body. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "We need to leave," I said. "Right now, get in your truck." "What's going on? Whose blood is that?" Before I could answer, I saw movement in the trees behind him. A tall, skeletal figure watching us. Its bone fingers curled like it was beckoning. "Get inside the cabin," I ordered, pushing Robert toward the door. Once inside, I locked every window and door. I told Robert everything, the bone arrangements, Jake, Margaret, Tom, the creature that called itself Talking Crow. "This is crazy, Vince," he said. "You need help. Let's get in my truck and drive to town right now." "It won't let us leave," I said. "It's been watching me for weeks, learning from me. It knows surgery now, my kind of surgery." Robert grabbed my shoulders. "Listen to yourself. This is grief talking. You never got over Rebecca's death. You've been alone up here too long." That's when we heard it, the sound of bones clicking. Together just outside the door, a dry voice that seemed to come from inside our own heads. "Healer who harms has a brother. Same bones. Good practice." Robert's face went white. He backed away from the door. "What the hell was that?" "That's Talking Crow," I said, "and it's going to try to fix us both." We spent the night huddled in the main room, backs to each other, watching every door and window. Robert had his hunting rifle. I had my surgical kit. Not that it would help against something that could remove bones without breaking skin. Just before dawn, the temperature in the cabin dropped suddenly. Our breath clouded in front of our faces. The windows frosted over from the inside. "It's coming," I whispered. Robert raised his rifle, aiming at the front door, but the attack came from behind us. Bony fingers burst through the floorboards, grabbing Robert's ankles. I lunged to help him, but I was too slow. The hands pulled him halfway through the floor before I could reach him. His rifle clattered beside me, unfired. "Vince!" he screamed, reaching for me. I grabbed his hands and pulled with all my strength. For a moment, we were locked in a tug-of-war with the thing beneath the floor. Then Robert's arms stretched unnaturally long. I could feel the bones being removed from inside, one by one, even as I held onto his hands. "It's taking my bones," he screamed. "Vince, help me!" I didn't let go. I kept holding his hands, even as they became soft and empty inside. I watched in horror as his face changed, cheekbones disappearing, jaw collapsing inward. That's when I realized I was helping it. By holding on to him, keeping him still, I was making its job easier. I had become the creature's assistant. I couldn't save Robert. By morning, he was gone, not dead, but taken somewhere beneath the cabin. I could hear him moaning under the floorboards, his voice growing weaker by the hour. I sat in the middle of the room, surrounded by my surgical tools, waiting. I knew now what the bone surgeon wanted. It had been studying me, learning from me. Every surgery I'd practiced on dead animals had taught it how to operate on living people. And now it wanted to perform its masterpiece on me. As the sun rose higher, the moaning beneath the floor stopped. The silence was worse than the cries for help. I called Robert's name over and over, no answer. Around noon, I heard a new sound, bones scraping against wood, coming up through the floor. I backed away, knife in hand, as a section of floorboards lifted. Bony fingers curled around the edges. The bone surgeon emerged, unfolding its 12-foot frame as it stood in my cabin. In the daylight, I could see it clearly for the first time. Its skeleton wasn't fully human, too tall, fingers too long, ribcage too wide. It wore a leather pouch around its neck, bulging with what I knew must be stolen bones. And its face. God, its face. My grandfather's skull with my own eyes looking out from the sockets. "Healer who harms," it said, its jaw clicking as it formed words. "Time to remove your pain." "Where's my brother?" I demanded, though I feared I already knew. The creature reached into its pouch and pulled out a handful of bones. Human arm bones, still wet with blood. Robert's bones. "He helps rebuild my people now," it said. "The ones your kind destroyed. The ones buried beneath this hollow." I understood then. Every bone it took was being used to reconstruct the Cherokee dead. The ones forced from these lands. The ones whose bones I'd found in the creek. "Why me?" I asked, trying to keep it talking while I looked for a way out. "Why my family?" "Your grandfather took our medicine," it said, "learned our healing ways, used them to make his drink. You have his hands, healer hands, but you use them to harm." "I was a surgeon," I said. "I saved lives." "You failed the woman, the baby. Your hands remember, your bones remember." It took a step toward me. "I will take the guilt bones first, then the shame bones, then the memory bones. You will be free." It reached for me with those long, bony fingers. I slashed at them with my knife, but the blade passed right through like cutting smoke. The cold hit me first, an icy feeling deep in my chest. Then pain, as something inside me shifted. I looked down and saw my shadow changing again, ribs disappearing one by one from its outline. With each missing bone, I felt lighter, emptier. "Stop," I gasped. "Healing hurts," it said. "You know this, surgeon." It was right. Every surgery causes pain before it heals. But this wasn't healing, this was erasure. It wasn't just taking my bones. It was taking my guilt, my grief, my memories of Rebecca. As another rib disappeared from my shadow, I felt my memories of Rebecca's death fading. The sound of her heart monitor flatlining grew distant. The weight of guilt I'd carried for years lightened, and that terrified me more than dying. "These parts of me," I said through gritted teeth, "they're not meant to be removed." The creature tilted its head, curious. "Pain is disease. I remove disease." "And not all pain is disease," I said. a realization dawning on me. Some pain is necessary. It reminds us we're alive. It teaches us. The bone surgeon paused, its empty eye sockets, my eyes, studying me. You choose pain? I choose to remember. I said, I choose to feel guilty for Rebecca's death. I choose to live with my failures. It reached for me again, but I didn't fight this time. Instead, I grabbed my scalpel from the table. You want to heal me? I asked. Watch, I'll show you real healing. With steady hands, surgeon's hands, I cut a small, precise incision over my heart. Blood welled up, bright red in the sunlight streaming through the window. The bone surgeon watched, fascinated. Healing isn't about removing pain, I said, my voice steady despite the blood running down my chest. It's about learning to live with it. Some wounds are meant to stay open. I made another cut, perpendicular to the first. Not deep enough to be dangerous, just enough to leave a scar. Every scar tells a story, I continued. Remove them and you remove who we are. The creature reached out, touching the blood on my chest with one bony finger. Your healing keeps the pain, it asked, sounding confused. The best healing happens when we accept that some things can't be fixed, I said. When we stop trying to erase our mistakes and learn to live with them instead. Something changed in those eyes, my eyes, looking out from my grandfather's skull, a flicker of understanding. Show me, it said. I knew what I had to do. The most difficult surgery of my life, not removing something but accepting it. Accepting that I couldn't save Rebecca, accepting that some patients die, no matter how skilled the surgeon. Accepting that healing sometimes means letting go of the need to fix everything. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. In my mind, I revisited the operating room where Rebecca died. I watched her heartbeat on the monitor, 1, 2, 3, 4 silence. But this time, instead of fighting the silence, I accepted it. I let it wash over me. When I opened my eyes, the bone surgeon was still there, watching me. But it had changed. The bones looked older, more fragile. The eyes in the sockets, my eyes, had softened. You heal differently, it said. Yes, I replied, not by removing, but by accepting. It reached into its pouch and pulled out a small bone, a human finger bone. It placed it gently on the table. Your brother, it said, not all taken, not yet. Hope surged through me. Can you bring him back? Cannot return what is given to the ancestors, it said, but can stop the taking. It backed away toward the opening in the floor. Your healing, I will learn it. Before it disappeared, it pointed one long finger at my chest, at the cuts I'd made. Mark of the healer, it said. Remember. Then it was gone, folding its massive frame back through the floor. The boards settled into place like they'd never been disturbed. I stood there bleeding for a long time. Then I stitched up my chest. Neat, clean sutures that would leave a perfect, cross-shaped scar over my heart. I found Robert in a cave beneath the cabin, reached through a tunnel under the floorboards. He was alive, but changed. Many of his bones were gone, replaced with something else, something lighter, almost translucent. He couldn't walk, could barely move, but he was alive. I carried him to my truck. The road was clear now, the ice melted away like it had never been there. As we drove toward town, toward a hospital that wouldn't understand what had happened to him, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The bone surgeon stood at the edge of the trees, watching us leave. Not threatening, just observing, learning. I never returned to the cabin, but sometimes when I'm performing surgery at the Veterans Hospital where I work now, I feel those eyes watching me, learning how to heal without erasing, learning that some wounds should never close completely. And at night, when I touch the cross-shaped scar over my heart, I still count Rebecca's rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, silence. The silence doesn't frighten me anymore. It reminds me that healing isn't about fixing everything. Sometimes the most difficult surgery is removing your own need to make everything perfect. My name is Catherine Moreau. I'm 34 years old, and I spend most of my days trying to be two people at once. During the day, I'm Dr. Moreau, the anthropologist who studies indigenous cultures with careful notes and recording devices. At night, I'm just Catherine, the Métis woman who dreams in languages I'm forgetting. I keep my grandmother's rosary beads in my pocket all the time. My fingers know each bead by heart now, worn smooth by prayers that stretch back generations before me. When I'm nervous, my hand finds them automatically, like they're a lifeline to something I can't quite name. "You keep touching those beads like they're going to save you," my department chair once told me. He laughed, not unkindly. "I thought you were a scientist, Catherine." I smiled and slipped the rosary deeper into my pocket. How could I explain that sometimes, when I hold these beads, I hear my grandmother singing, how the Ojibwe words taste like ash in my mouth now, and the French phrases feel like broken glass when I try to say them. My favorite memory is from when I was 7. My grandmother sat behind me on her porch, braiding my hair while singing songs older than any written history. Her fingers were gentle but sure, each movement connecting me to everything that ever was. I felt whole then, like I belonged to something bigger than myself. Now I live in a small university apartment filled with books about cultures I should understand in my bones. My notebooks are full of careful observations about my own heritage, as if I'm studying creatures in a zoo rather than my own ancestors. "You write like a white woman," my grandmother told me the last time I visited her. She didn't say it to hurt me, she just stated it as a fact, like commenting on the weather. My biggest fear isn't the dark or death or even being alone. It's that she's right, that I've become too broken by assimilation to understand my own heritage, that all my degrees and publications are just fancy ways of hiding how lost I really am. I can still read the weather in how animals behave. I know how to prepare the traditional foods my grandmother taught me. On clear nights, I can navigate by stars my ancestors named, but these skills feel like memorized facts rather than lived knowledge. I'm small, with sharp features that my grandmother said came from her side of the family. I keep my hair in a braid that's too perfect, each strand in place like I'm trying too hard to prove something. The scars on my wrists from the residential school I attended as a child have faded to thin white lines, but they still itch when I'm stressed. Sometimes when the wind blows a certain way, I swear I can hear my grandmother's voice, but the words are always just out of reach, like trying to catch smoke with my bare hands. That's why I record everything, every story, every tradition, every scrap of cultural knowledge I can find. Each notebook filled is proof that I belong somewhere, that there's a history in my blood, even if I can't always feel it. My grandmother used to ask me, "Can pain live in blood? Can memories pass down like eye color or the shape of your hands?" I didn't have an answer then, but I was about to find out. November in Minnesota brings a special kind of cold. Not the friendly cold that makes your cheeks pink and your breath visible. This is the kind of cold that feels like it wants to hurt you. I came to Kaweshiwi Lake to interview Elder Joseph Kingbird about the old stories. My university gave me a small grant to document traditional tales before they're lost forever. What I didn't tell my department was that these were my stories too, or at least they should have been. "You picked a bad time to come here," Joseph told me when I arrived. His eyes were dark and serious. "The ice is coming early this year." "I'll be fine," I said, patting my modern camping gear. "I've got everything I need." Joseph just shook his head. "Some stories are too hungry to just tell. They want to be lived." I didn't understand what he meant then. I smiled politely and set up my recording equipment. 3 days later, I was trapped on a small island in the middle of the lake. The weather report had been wrong. An early freeze had come overnight, coating the water with ice too thick to break through with a paddle, but too thin to walk on. I was stuck in between Not quite here, not quite there, just like always. The island wasn't random. I'd chosen it specifically because of a story in my family. In 1847, a fur trader named Jean-Baptiste Moreau had been stranded here during a brutal winter. According to the history books, he and his companions had starved to death rather than resort to eating human flesh. But my grandmother had told a different version of that story, one where Jean-Baptiste had made a choice that echoed through our family for generations. Jean-Baptiste Moreau was my great-great-grandfather. I set up my tent and tried to make a plan. The weather report on my satellite phone said the cold snap would last at least a week. I had enough food for maybe 10 days if I was careful. The rangers knew where I was, but they probably wouldn't check on me until my permit was up in 2 weeks. That first night, the wind howled around my tent like it was trying to speak. I huddled in my sleeping bag, fingers running over my grandmother's. Rosary beads. You're being silly, Catherine, I told myself. You're a scientist. You study stories. You don't live them. When I woke the next morning, frost had formed on the inside of my tent in patterns that looked strangely like family trees. The branches split and reconnected in ways that reminded me of the genealogy charts I'd made for my research. I spent that day exploring the small island. It was barely a quarter-mile across, rocky and covered with pine trees. The shore was ringed with ice that grew thicker by the hour. Looking across the frozen lake, I could see the mainland, tantalizingly close but impossible to reach. That night, I found Jean-Baptiste's journal. I wasn't looking for it. I was just gathering more firewood when my boot hit something solid under the snow. A metal box, old and rusted, but still intact. Inside was a leather-bound journal, the pages yellow and brittle with age. The first entry was dated November 12th, 1847. The handwriting was tight and neat, the words in French. My French is rusty, but I could make out enough. The ice has trapped us, 4 men on this cursed island. We have food for perhaps 2 weeks. After that, God help us. I should have been excited. This was an incredible historical find, exactly the kind of primary source that could make an anthropologist's career. Instead, I felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with the November air. Because as I read those words, I could taste the fear in them, not just understand it, taste it, like copper on my tongue. And I knew somehow that I was reading my own future as much as his past. That night, the wind carried voices. They spoke, in a mix of French and Ojibwe, languages I once knew but had lost. I couldn't understand the words, but I felt their meaning in my bones, a warning, a hunger, a memory trying to break through. I was trapped between worlds now, unable to return to the shore, my academic life, or cross to the deeper wilderness, my indigenous heritage, just like the ice, too solid to break through, but too fragile to trust, just like my identity. By the end of my first week on the island, I had read most of Jean-Baptiste's journal. Each night, I would sit by my small fire and turn the brittle pages carefully. The more I read, the more I felt like I was reading my own thoughts. The hunger changes a man, Jean-Baptiste wrote on December 3rd. It crawls inside you and becomes something alive, something with wants of its own. The strangest thing was happening as I read. I could taste what he described, not just imagine it, but actually taste it. When he wrote about the last of their dried meat, my mouth filled with the flavor of salt and smoke. When he described chewing pine needles to fight the hunger, my tongue went bitter and sharp. One morning I woke up speaking Ojibwe, a full sentence that I hadn't known I remembered. It slipped out of my mouth like water, and for a second I felt whole. Then it was gone, and I was left grasping at the memory. I called Elder Joseph on my satellite phone. The connection was bad, but I could hear enough. "You need to leave that place," he said, his voice crackling through static. "That island remembers what happened there." "I can't leave," I told him. "The ice—" "Not the ice," he cut me off. "Something is keeping you there. Something hungry." The call dropped after that. I tried calling back, but the phone wouldn't connect anymore. That night it stopped working completely. The battery was full, but the screen stayed black, like something had reached inside and turned it off. That same night, I saw it for the first time. I was gathering wood again when I noticed something tall standing between the trees. At first, I thought it was just a dead pine, but then it moved. It was shaped like a man, but wrong. Too tall, too thin. Its arms hung down past its knees, ending in long fingers that looked like twigs. Its face was hidden in shadow, but I could feel it watching me. I ran back to my camp, heart pounding. I told myself it was just the light playing tricks, just my mind getting bored with isolation. But deep down, I knew better. In the firelight that night, I opened Jean-Baptiste's journal again. The entry for December 15th made my blood freeze. Pierre died today. We told ourselves we would not do it. We made promises to God, but the hunger speaks with a voice of its own now. I slammed the journal shut, but it was too late. I could taste it, the desperate, terrible meal they had made of Pierre. My stomach growled, not with disgust, but with want. And I ran into the woods and threw up until there was nothing left. When I came back to camp, the journal was open again, though I was sure I had closed it. It was turned to a page I hadn't read before, with a crude drawing of a creature. Tall, skeletal, with a head like a deer skull. Next to it, Jean-Baptiste had written, "It comes for us now. It wears our faces. It knows our names." That night, I dreamed I was hunting, not with a gun or bow, but with my hands and teeth. I woke up with dirt under my fingernails and blood in my mouth from where I'd bitten my own lip. The next day, I found deer tracks around my tent. Following them, I discovered a deer carcass deep in the woods. It had been torn open and partially eaten, not by wolves or bears. The cuts were too precise, too human. As I stood looking at it, I saw my grandmother's face reflected in the pool of blood beside it. Not just her features, but her actual face, like she was looking up at me from below. Her mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. I backed away, tripping over roots and rocks in my hurry to get back to camp. When I got there, the tall figure was standing next to my tent. It still had no face that I could see, but now I could make out its body better. It was like a skeleton with skin stretched too tight over the bones. And though it had no clear features, something about it was horribly familiar. It had my grandmother's hands, my mother's height, my own sharp chin. It was made of pieces of my family, stitched together into a monster. "Who are you?" I whispered. It tilted its head, and I heard a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "I am the hunger that never dies. I am the choice that hollows out a bloodline. I am what's left when culture starves." It took a step toward me, and I saw its face clearly for the first time. It wore Jean-Baptiste's features, but stretched and wrong, like a mask that didn't quite fit. Behind those features, I caught glimpses of others. My grandmother, my mother, myself. "I've been waiting for you, Catherine," it said, and its voice was my own voice, played back to me from a broken recorder. "You've been feeding me for years. Every story you collect, every tradition you study instead of live, every bit of culture you turn into data." It smiled, showing teeth that were filed to points. "Academic research is just another way to consume your own people." I didn't sleep that night. I sat by my fire with Jean-Baptiste's journal in my lap and my grandmother's rosary tight in my fist. Every sound from the dark woods made me jump. "This isn't real," I whispered to myself. "You're a scientist. This is just isolation, playing tricks on your mind." But if that was true, why could I still taste blood in my mouth? Why did my stomach growl when I thought of the torn deer in the woods? The next few days blurred together. I rationed my food carefully, but I was always hungry now. It wasn't a normal hunger. It lived somewhere deeper, like it was chewing on my soul instead of my stomach. I kept reading the journal, Jean-Baptiste's handwriting got messier as the entries went on. The last few pages were almost impossible to read, the words running together and sometimes switching from French to Ojibwe mid-sentence. The final entry just said, "It's inside me now. God forgive me for what I've become." One morning, I woke to find fresh meat by my tent. Not deer this time. It looked different, the flesh darker and marbled strangely. I told myself it was moose or bear, but deep down, I knew better. The worst part? I was so hungry that I cooked and ate it anyway. As I swallowed the first bite, memories flooded my mind, but they weren't my memories. I saw a trading post in winter. I felt the sting of snow on my face. I heard men speaking French with an accent I'd never heard before. I was experiencing Jean-Baptiste's memories as if they were my own. After that, things got worse. I started losing time. I'd be sitting by my fire one moment, then suddenly find myself deep in the woods with no memory of how I got there. My clothes would be dirty, sometimes torn. Once, I found blood under my fingernails that wasn't mine. On what I think was my 6th week on the island, Elder Joseph showed up. I was so happy to see another person that I ran to him, almost crying with relief. "How did you get here?" I asked. The ice is thick enough to walk on now," he said. His voice sounded strange, too flat. "I came to help you, Catherine, to perform the cleansing ceremony you need." Something felt wrong. If the ice was thick enough to walk on, why hadn't I tried to leave? Why hadn't the rangers come for me? How long had I really been here? Joseph set up for a ceremony, burning sage and cedar, singing in Ojibwe. The songs were familiar, the same ones my grandmother used to sing while braiding my hair. "The hunger recognizes its own blood," Joseph said suddenly, stopping his song. "You've been feeding it your whole life, Catherine." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Your research, your recordings, your studies. Taking culture and turning it into data is just another way of consuming it." Those were the same words the creature had said to me. I looked at Joseph more closely. His eyes didn't look right. They were too dark, too empty. This wasn't Joseph at all. I backed away, but something inside me was moving toward him. Some new hunger that lived in my chest now. "You're not real," I whispered. "Neither are you," not Joseph said. "Not anymore." What happened next is hard to explain. It was like my body moved without me telling it to. My hands reached for Joseph's throat. I could feel myself screaming inside, trying to stop. But the hunger was stronger. When it was over, I looked down at my hands. They didn't look like my hands anymore. The fingers were too long. The skin stretched too tight over the bones. I ran to the lake and looked at my reflection in the ice. My face was changing. My cheeks were sunken. My eyes too big. My teeth sharper. I looked like Jean-Baptiste in his crude drawing, and I looked like my grandmother, and I looked like myself, all at the same time. The next day, I heard a voice calling from the shore. A park ranger, Michelle Beaumont, according to her uniform. She was real. She had to be real. "Dr. Moreau," she called, "are you out there? Your permit expired 2 weeks ago." I should have been relieved. This was my chance to escape. Instead, I felt the hunger rise up again. "Help!" I called back, making my voice weak and frightened. "I'm hurt. I can't walk." Ranger Beaumont carefully made her way across the ice. I watched her from the trees, my new long fingers flexing with anticipation. That night, I sat by my fire and cried. Not for Michelle, whose face I now wore occasionally, like trying on a mask. I cried because I finally understood. The Wendigo, that's what this creature was called in the old stories, wasn't just some monster in the woods. It was me. It had always been me. My whole career, my research, my careful documentation of dying traditions, it had all been the hunger. Taking stories that weren't mine to take, turning living culture into dead data, consuming my own heritage, instead of living it. The next morning, my research assistant David arrived, no doubt sent to look for me. When I didn't return, I watched myself treat him like a specimen. I heard myself explaining the anthropological significance of what I was doing to him, my voice calm and academic, even as my new, long fingers worked. I was becoming the perfect predator, using my education, my scientific detachment, to feed the hunger that lived in my blood. That night, my grandmother's ghost visited me, not the monster wearing her face, but her real spirit. She sat across the fire from me, her eyes sad. "You have a choice to make, little one," she said, using my childhood nickname. "The same choice Jean-Baptiste made, but you can choose differently." I reached for her, but my hands passed through her like smoke. "How?" I asked. "The hunger is too strong now." "What feeds it?" she asked. I looked around my camp, my notebooks full of research, my recording equipment, Jean-Baptiste's journal. All my careful documentation of a culture I should have been living instead of studying. I've been starving my whole life, I realized, filling myself with books instead of belonging. My grandmother nodded. "The Wendigo isn't fed by flesh alone. It feeds on disconnection, on the space between who you are and who you pretend to be." She stood up, her form already fading. "Choose differently, little one." The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. My body was still changing, my fingers too long, my hunger too deep, but my mind was my own again, at least for now. I looked at my camp through new eyes, my tent, my equipment, my notebooks filled with observations about my own culture as if it were something foreign to study. I had a choice to make. I could keep feeding the hunger, keep pretending to be Dr. Moreau, the objective scientist, while the Wendigo inside me grew stronger. I could continue my research, document every story, preserve every tradition, on paper, not in life, or I could choose differently. The Wendigo inside me screamed as I picked up my notebooks. It clawed at my insides as I gathered my recordings. It howled as I piled everything next to Jean-Baptiste's journal. "You need me," it whispered with my grandmother's voice. "Without your research, what are you? Not métis enough, not white enough, nothing." My hands shook as I lit the match. The Wendigo was right. Without my research, who was I? All those years of careful documentation, the only proof I had that I belonged somewhere. "You'll die without me," the Wendigo said, now using my own voice. "Your career, your identity, everything you've worked for." The match burned down, getting closer to my fingers. I had to decide. In that moment, I understood what my grandmother had been trying to tell me all those years. Culture isn't something you study, it's something you live. Memory isn't stored in books or recordings. It lives in blood and bone, and the stories you tell by being who you are. I dropped the match. The fire caught quickly. My notebooks curled and blackened. The tapes melted. Jean-Baptiste's journal, the record of his terrible choice, burned brightest of all. The Wendigo screamed inside me. I could feel it weakening as the fire destroyed what had been feeding it. Not just human flesh, but the cold, clinical way I had consumed my own heritage. "I choose differently," I whispered. My body convulsed as the hunger fought to stay alive. I fell to my knees, watching through blurry eyes as everything I had worked for turned to ash. My career, my research, the careful walls I had built between myself and my own history. As the last notebook burned, I felt the Wendigo leave me. Not all at once, but slowly, like poison draining from a wound. The two long fingers shortened, the constant hunger faded, the voices in my head, some my own, some belonging to ancestors I had never known, grew quiet. In their place came a different kind of silence, not empty but waiting, like the pause before a story begins. I stayed there until the fire died down. Then I gathered what little I had left, my grandmother's rosary, the clothes on my back, and walked to the shore. The ice was solid now, thick enough to hold my weight. I could see the mainland, no longer an impossible distance away. As I took my first step onto the ice, I heard my grandmother's voice one last time. Not from the Wendigo, not from some memory, but from inside me, where culture and blood and story all lived together. "Remember," she said, "some stories are too hungry to just tell. They want to be lived." I walked across the ice toward home, each step breaking a path that Jean-Baptiste had never found. Behind me, the island grew small, just another piece of land in the vast wilderness. I don't know what I'll do now. My career is over. The anthropologist Dr. Catherine Moreau died on that island, along with the Wendigo she had been feeding her whole life. But Catherine, just Catherine, is still walking, still breathing, still carrying stories in her blood, and this time I won't write them down. I'll live them. My name is Elena Volkov. I'm 31 years old, and I take pictures for a living. Right now, I'm in Glacier National Park in Montana. It's 1979, and I'm here to photograph wolves for National Geographic. People always notice my hands first. They shake a little, all the time. Old frostbite damage. But when I hold my camera, they become steady. It's strange how that works, like my body knows that my art matters more than my pain. The park rangers warned me about coming here so late in the season. "Winter comes early in the mountains," they said. I just smiled. I know winter better than most Americans. I grew up in Russia, Siberia to be exact. I know cold that gets into your bones and never leaves. I didn't tell them about my mother. Nobody wants to hear those stories. I was only 8 when they took her to the prison camp. Political prisoner, they called her. Her crime was loving my father, who had spoken against Stalin. We were sent to the same camp, but different sections. They let me see her once a week. These small mercies from cruel men. That last winter was the worst. Food ran out early. Heat was a memory. My mother and I were finally put in the same cell when the guards realized we would both die soon anyway. I still see her face when I close my eyes. Blue-tinged lips, frost on her eyelashes. She sang to me even as her voice grew weaker. Old Russian lullabies about spring and warmth and better days. Love was our only heat. "Elenushka," she whispered one night, "come close." I pressed against her, trying to share my body heat. But I was so small, so cold myself. She wrapped her thin blanket around me, leaving none for herself. "No, Mama," I protested. "You'll freeze." "Shh," she said. "This is what mothers do." By morning, she was gone. I lived because she died. Sometimes I wonder if I deserved that sacrifice. The wolves I'm photographing understand what humans often forget. The pack survives together, or not at all. They don't leave their own behind. Maybe that's why I feel drawn to them. They represent the family bonds I lost. Every morning, I write a letter to my mother in Russian. Then I burn it and watch the smoke carry my words up to wherever she is. Today I wrote, "I'm sorry I couldn't save you. The rangers assigned me to photograph the Eastern Valley. It's remote," they said, "good wolf territory." When I first saw it, my heart stopped for a moment. The mountains curve around like embracing arms. The white slopes, the jagged rocks. It looks exactly like the Siberian landscape where my mother died. Geography shouldn't be able to trigger nightmares, but here we are. I set up my camp near an old wooden shelter. The ranger mentioned it was built after some tragedy in the 1930s. A group of families got caught in an early blizzard. The mothers died, protecting their children from the cold. "Sounds familiar," I muttered, but the ranger didn't hear me. My first week here was peaceful. I took pictures of ice formations that looked like children playing. I followed wolf tracks but didn't see the animals themselves. The cold was manageable, then the weather changed. The sky turned the color of a bruise. The wind picked up, carrying snowflakes sharp as glass. I've seen enough blizzards to know when one is coming, so I gathered my equipment and headed back to the shelter. I barely made it. The snow came down like it had a grudge, piling up against the door until I had to push with my shoulder to close it. Inside, the shelter was dark and smelled of old wood and something else. Something I couldn't name, but recognized somehow. As I lit my lantern, I noticed something on the walls. Photographs, old yellowed images of families, men with serious faces, women holding children, all posed in front of this very shelter, the 1932 expedition families. They looked happy, unaware of what waited for them in these mountains. I set up my sleeping bag and made some soup on my portable stove. The wind outside howled like something alive and angry. It reminded me of the prison camp, that same merciless sound that meant death was coming. That night, I dreamed of my mother singing. In my dream, her voice came from outside the shelter. I got up and opened the door, but instead of the blizzard, I saw 3 women standing in the snow. They wore tattered fur coats. Their skin was blue-white, like the heart of a glacier. Their eyes reflected the moonlight in a way human eyes shouldn't. One of them reached out her hand to me and smiled. "Helenushka," she said in my mother's voice, "come close, you must be so cold." I woke up, gasping, my sleeping bag drenched in sweat, despite the freezing air. Outside, the blizzard continued to rage. But for a moment, I could have sworn I heard women's voices singing an old Russian lullaby about spring and warmth and better days. I told myself it was just the wind and my old memories playing tricks. But deep down, I knew something in this valley had recognized the guilt I carried. The cold fingers of fear traced my spine, just like they did the night my mother died, and I was trapped here, just like before. The blizzard didn't stop for 3 days. I rationed my food carefully, counting crackers and measuring coffee grounds like they were gold dust. The radio I brought stopped working on day 2, just static, no matter how much I fiddled with the dial. I kept busy developing some of my film using the small kit I always carry. The wolves I'd managed to photograph before the storm looked healthy, strong. Family groups huddled together against the cold, protecting each other the way families should. On the 4th morning, the storm finally let up. Not gone completely, but calm enough that I could step outside. The snow had piled higher than my waist in some spots. The valley looked different somehow, cleaner, like the storm had erased everything and started fresh. I trudged through the snow to check my supplies in the small storage shed next to the shelter. Inside, everything was frozen solid. Even my backup radio's batteries were dead from the cold. That's when I noticed the footprints, small and delicate like a woman's. They led from the forest edge right up to the shed door, then back again. But I hadn't seen anyone since arriving at the valley. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded tiny in the vast whiteness. "Is someone there?" Only silence answered, but I felt watched. The same feeling I used to get in the prison camp when the guards would stare at us through the cell windows. I followed the footprints, camera in hand. They led to a clearing about half a mile from my shelter. The snow here was packed down as if someone had been walking in circles. In the center stood something that made my blood freeze. Ice sculptures. Perfect, clear ice shaped like children playing. A little boy throwing a snowball, a girl making a snow angel. 2 smaller children building what looked like a snow fort. They were beautiful, too beautiful. Ice doesn't form like that naturally. Someone had made these, but who could create such perfect sculptures in the middle of a blizzard? I took pictures, my hands steady despite the cold. Through my viewfinder, I noticed something strange. The ice children seemed to be looking at the same spot in the forest. I turned to see what they were looking at, and my heart nearly stopped. A woman stood between 2 pine trees. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like an old-fashioned dress under a fur coat. Her white hair blew around her face in the light wind. She was too far away to see clearly, but I had the strangest feeling she was smiling at me. I lowered my camera to get a better look, and she was gone. Just like that. No footprints leading away, no disturbed snow, nothing. I'm seeing things, I muttered to myself. Just tired and hungry, that's all. Back at the shelter, I tried the radio again. Nothing but static. I checked my map to figure out how far I'd have to hike to reach the ranger station. 20 miles, maybe more with the deep snow. Impossible right now. I was stuck here until someone came looking for me. My editor knew roughly where I was, but I wasn't expected to check in for another week. No one would worry yet. That night, the temperature dropped even lower. I could see my breath inside the shelter. My sleeping bag wasn't enough, so I put on every piece of clothing I had and still shivered. Around midnight, I woke to the sound of singing, a soft, gentle lullaby, the same one my mother used to sing. Half asleep, I thought it was another dream. But the singing continued, getting louder. It was coming from outside. I grabbed my flashlight and opened the door. The cold hit me like a slap, but I barely noticed because of what I saw. 3 women stood in a half circle about 20 feet from the shelter. The snow around them seemed to glow blue in the moonlight. They all wore old-fashioned clothes, long dresses under fur coats, like from the 1930s. Their skin was so pale it almost looked blue. They were singing, not just any song, but the exact Russian lullaby my mother sang to me. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice shaking. "How do you know that song?" The singing stopped. The woman in the middle stepped forward. Her eyes reflected my flashlight beam like animal eyes would. "We know all Mother's songs," she said, her voice somehow both distant and close at the same time. "We've been waiting for you, Elena." I stepped back, nearly tripping. "How do you know my name?" "We know all lost daughters," said another woman. "We've been watching you. You're so cold, Elena, so alone." "Come with us," said the third. "We'll keep you warm, the way your mother couldn't." That hit me like a punch to the stomach. I slammed the door shut and locked it, then huddled in the corner, flashlight clutched to my chest. "Not real," I whispered to myself. "Hallucinating from the cold, that's all." But I knew hypothermia hallucinations, and this felt different, more real. The women knew things they couldn't possibly know. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When morning came, I cautiously opened the door. Fresh snow had fallen, covering any footprints that might have been there. But placed neatly on the doorstep was a small bundle wrapped in cloth. I picked it up and brought it inside. Unwrapping it, I found dried meat, berries, and what looked like bread. Food. Good food. Not the stale crackers I had left. Where had it come from? The Rangers. But how would they have made it through the snow without me hearing a vehicle? I was hungry enough not to question it too much. I ate a small piece of the meat. It tasted strange but good, rich and warming. Soon after eating, I felt better than I had in days. The cold didn't seem to bite as much. My mind felt clearer. That afternoon, I decided to explore more of the area around the shelter. The strange encounter from the night before still bothered me, but daylight made everything seem more normal. About a mile from the shelter, I found a small cave in the hillside. Inside, protected from the elements, was something I never expected to see. Photographs, dozens of them pinned to the rock walls, old black and white images of the same families I'd seen in the pictures at the shelter. But these were different. These showed them after the storm. Frozen bodies arranged in circles, mothers wrapped around children, protective poses, even in death. Their faces looked peaceful, as if they'd simply fallen asleep in the snow. And behind these photographs were older ones, drawings, really, cave paintings showing the same scene repeated through time, women with outstretched arms, children huddled in their embrace, snow and ice surrounding them all. This valley had seen this pattern before, many times before. As I stared at the images, I felt a cool breath on the back of my neck. "They tried to leave," said a woman's voice behind me. "But mothers know best. Children need protection from the cruel world." I turned, slowly, already knowing what I would see. One of the women from the night before stood at the cave entrance. In daylight, I could see her more clearly. Her skin wasn't just pale, it was translucent, like I could almost see through her to the ice beneath. Her eyes were the pale blue of a winter sky, but with no pupils, no darkness at their centers. "What are you?" I whispered. She smiled, revealing teeth like tiny icicles. "We are the mothers who never left. We are the love that keeps you safe, even when it hurts." I backed away, pressing against the cave wall. "You're not real." "We're as real as grief, Elena. As real as guilt." She stepped closer. "We know what you carry, the weight of surviving when she didn't." My legs gave out and I slid down the wall to the floor. How did she know? How could she possibly know about my mother? "The cold is coming again tonight," she said gently. "You'll need warmth. Come to us when you're ready. We've prepared a place for you." Then she turned and walked out of the cave. I scrambled to my feet and followed, but when I reached the entrance, she was gone. Only smooth, unbroken snow stretched in all directions. I ran all the way back to the shelter, my heart pounding. Inside, I found more food waiting, and the temperature was warmer somehow. The fire in the small wood stove was burning. Bright, though I was sure I'd let it die down before leaving. Someone, or something, was taking care of me, and that terrified me more than freezing to death ever could. A week passed in the strangest way. The blizzard would ease up, then return with a fury, like it was breathing. On the calmer days, I tried to hike toward the ranger station, but something always stopped me. New snowfall blocking the path. Wind so strong I couldn't stand up straight. Once, an avalanche crashed down right in front of me, missing me by inches. The Ice Mothers, as I'd started thinking of them, appeared every night now. Sometimes just watching the shelter from a distance, sometimes leaving food, sometimes singing those lullabies that brought tears to my eyes. I'd stopped being afraid of them, which scared me more than the fear itself had. They were becoming familiar, comforting even. The food they brought made me feel stronger than I should after being trapped for so long. The cold bothered me less each day. I found myself able to stay outside for hours without my fingers going numb. And my reflection was changing. My dark hair now had streaks of white in it, like frost had settled there permanently. My skin seemed paler, almost glowing in certain light. "What's happening to me?" I asked my reflection one morning, using a small mirror from my pack. "You're becoming safe," a voice answered from behind. I spun around. One of the Ice Mothers stood in the shelter, though I hadn't heard the door open. She was the tallest of the three, with long white hair that moved like it was underwater. "How did you get in here?" I asked, surprisingly calm. "We are everywhere. The cold touches," she said, smiling. "And you invited us in, Elena, every time you remembered your mother, every time you felt that guilt." She moved closer, and I felt no urge to back away. "Who are you, really?" I asked. "We were like you once, mothers who couldn't save our children from the world's cruelty, or children who watched their mothers sacrifice everything." She touched my cheek, her finger cold but not unpleasant. "In 1932, the storm came early. Families tried to leave the valley, but the snow was too deep, the cold too fierce." "The expedition families," I whispered. "You were them." She nodded. The mothers wrapped themselves around their children, giving the last of their warmth. But it wasn't enough. So we made a choice. We became the cold, to control it, to protect forever those we couldn't save then. "That's not possible," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were empty. I'd seen enough now to know something impossible was happening. "Come," she said, holding out her hand. "There's someone who wants to see you." I shouldn't have gone. Every survival instinct screamed to stay put, but I took her hand and let her lead me outside. The other two Ice Mothers waited there. Between them stood a fourth figure, smaller, a woman in a ragged prison uniform, her dark hair streaked with grey, her face gaunt but beautiful. My mother. "Mama?" I whispered, my voice breaking. She smiled, that same smile that had warmed me through the coldest nights in the prison. "Elenushka, my brave girl." I ran to her, forgetting everything else. Her arms wrapped around me, cold as ice, but somehow right. I sobbed against her shoulder, breathing in her scent, somehow still there after all these years. "How?" I managed to ask. "The mothers found me," she said softly. "They heard my love for you echoing across time. They brought me here to wait for you." I pulled back to look at her face. Something wasn't quite right. Her eyes were that same pupilless blue as the Ice Mother's. Her skin had that same translucent quality. "You're not really her," I said, stepping back. "You're something they made." The thing that looked like my mother tilted her head. "Does it matter? I have her memories, her love for you. Isn't that what you've wanted all these years? To be with your mother again?" I couldn't answer, because she was right. Wasn't this exactly what I dreamed of since I was 8 years old? My mother returned to me. "Stay with us, Elena," said one of the Ice Mothers. "Become like us. No more pain, no more guilt, just family, forever." I looked around at the 4 of them, at the valley, pristine and beautiful. I hadn't felt cold in days, hadn't felt hungry, hadn't felt the sharp edge of grief that had been my constant companion for decades. "I need to think," I said finally. My mother, or whatever she was, nodded. "Of course, my darling. We have all the time in the world." I went back to the shelter alone. Inside, I found all my film developed. Photos I hadn't processed myself were laid out neatly on the small table. The wolves, the mountains, the ice, formations, but they looked different somehow. More beautiful, but colder. Like the life had been frozen out of them. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what the Ice Mothers had offered. Peace, family, an end to the loneliness I'd carried all my life. All I had to do was give up my humanity, become whatever they were. Was that so high a price? What did the human world offer me anyway? A lonely apartment in New York? Assignments that sent me to the far corners of the earth, always an observer, never a participant. No family, no real friends, just my camera and my memories. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke to the sound of an engine, distant but getting closer. A snowmobile. Someone was coming. I ran outside. Dawn was just breaking, painting. The snow pink and gold. In the distance, I could see a small, dark shape moving toward the shelter. A person on a snowmobile. For a second, relief flooded through me. Rescue! Then I remembered the Ice Mothers, and my stomach knotted with fear. They wouldn't let anyone take me away. Not now that they'd found me. I ran toward the approaching snowmobile, waving my arms frantically. "Turn back!" I shouted, though I knew they couldn't hear me yet. "It's not safe!" The driver didn't slow. Down. As they got closer, I could see it was a man in a park ranger uniform, young, maybe mid-20s, with a concerned expression that deepened when he saw me. He stopped the snowmobile about 20 feet away and pulled off his helmet. "Ms. Volkov," he called, "Elena Volkov. Your editor called when you missed your check-in. I'm Kevin Dalton. Are you okay?" I glanced around nervously, expecting to see the Ice Mothers materialize from the snow. But the valley was empty except for us. "You need to leave," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Right now, it's not safe here." He frowned, climbing off the snowmobile. "What do you mean? Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine, but—" I stopped, unsure how to explain. "There's something wrong with this place, something not natural." Kevin gave me a patient smile, the kind people give to children or the very old. "You've been alone in the cold for a long time, Ma'am. That can play tricks on your mind. Why don't we get you back to the ranger station, get you warmed up and checked out?" "You don't understand," I insisted, backing away as he approached. "They won't let me leave. They won't let you take me." "Who won't?" he asked. looking around at the empty valley. That's when I saw them, standing in a line along the ridge above us. 3 tall figures and 1 smaller one, watching, waiting. "Them," I whispered, pointing. Kevin followed my gaze, squinting. "I don't see anyone, Ms. Volkov." Of course he didn't. They were only showing themselves to me. "Please," I begged, "just go. Come back with more people, or don't come back at all." But he kept coming closer, concern etched on his young face. "I can't leave you here. You're obviously distressed. Let me help you." He reached out to take my arm, and that's when the wind picked up, not gradually but all at once, like someone had flipped a switch. Snow swirled around us, and the temperature plummeted so fast I could see Kevin's breath turn to ice crystals in front of his face. "What the?" he started, then gasped as the cold hit his lungs. I grabbed him and tried to pull him toward the shelter. "Run!" I shouted over the howling wind. We only made it a few steps before the snow beneath Kevin's feet shifted. He stumbled, then fell to his knees. I tried to help him up, but he seemed frozen in place, kneeling in the snow. "I can't move," he said, panic edging into his voice. "My legs won't work." I watched in horror as frost crept up from the snow, covering his boots, then his pants. It wasn't normal frost. It was thicker, more deliberate, like hands molding clay. "No," I screamed into the wind. "Leave him alone. He's just trying to help me." But the frost kept climbing, reaching his waist now. Kevin's eyes were wide with terror. "What's happening to me?" he gasped, his words forming white puffs that hung in the air longer than they should have. I clawed at the ice forming around him, but it was hard as steel. My fingers slipped off without making a dent. "Please," I sobbed, looking up at the ridge where the ice mothers watched. "Don't do this, let him go." The wind died down just enough for me to hear their response, carried on the air like smoke. "He wants to take you away," they said in unison. "Back to the cruel world, back to your loneliness. We're protecting you, Elena, the way mothers should." The ice had reached Kevin's chest now. His movements were getting slower, his breathing shallow. His skin was taking on a bluish tint. "This isn't protection," I shouted. "This is murder." "He won't suffer," my mother's voice said gently from behind me. "None of them do. We make it peaceful, like falling asleep in warm arms." I turned to see her standing just a few feet away, watching Kevin with something like pity in her inhuman eyes. "Make it stop," I begged her. "If you love me like my mother did, make it stop." "I can't, Elenushka," she said sadly. "This is what we are, what you're becoming." I looked down at my hands and realized with horror that I could see through them. Slightly. My skin had the same translucent quality as the ice mothers. I was turning into one of them. Kevin's eyes found mine, cloudy with frost but still aware. "Mama," he whispered, though whether he was calling for his own mother or seeing me as one, I couldn't tell. Then his eyes froze over completely, and he was still. A perfect ice sculpture of a young man kneeling in prayer, preserved forever in the moment of his death. I fell to my knees beside him, tears freezing on my cheeks before they could fall. What had I done? By staying here, by accepting their care, I had led this man to his death. "You see now," my mother said, placing her cold hand on my shoulder, "the outside world brings only danger, only pain. Stay with us, Elena. Become what you were always meant to be, a protector, a mother." I looked up at her, then at Kevin's frozen form, then at my own translucent hands. I had a choice to make. I couldn't sleep that night. How could I, with Kevin's frozen body still kneeling in the snow outside? I sat by the window watching as moonlight turned his ice-covered form into something that almost glowed, beautiful and terrible at the same time. My hands were changing faster now, not just see-through, but actually glowing a soft blue in the darkness. When I touched the window glass, frost patterns spread from my fingertips like growing plants. "This isn't what I want," I whispered to myself. But wasn't it? Part of me, a growing part, felt a strange peace settling in. The constant ache of guilt that had followed me since my mother's death was fading. In its place was something cooler, calmer, a purpose. I could stay here forever, become one of them, never feel pain or loss again. The radio on the table suddenly crackled to life, making me jump. It had been dead for days, and now it was working. "Ranger Dalton, come in," said a woman's voice through the static. "Kevin, do you copy? Did you find the photographer?" I grabbed the radio, my heart racing. "Hello, can you hear me? This is Elena Volkov." Static hissed, then, "Miss Volkov, this is Ranger Santos at the North Station. Where's Kevin?" I looked out at Kevin's frozen form. What could I say? He can't come to the radio," I managed. "Please, you have to send help, but not just one person, several people with weapons." "Weapons?" The ranger sounded alarmed. "Are you in danger? Is there wildlife threatening you?" "Not wildlife," I said. "Something else. Something... I know this sounds crazy, but there are these women. They're not human. They killed Kevin when he tried to help me." There was a long pause. Then Ranger Santos spoke again, her voice careful. "Ms. Volkov, have you been exposed to extreme cold? Are you somewhere warm right now?" She thought I was hallucinating from hypothermia. Of course she did. "I'm not crazy," I said. "And I'm not imagining things. Kevin is dead, frozen solid right outside the shelter, and I'm changing too. They're turning me into one of them." "Okay, Elena," she said in that same careful voice. "I'm going to send a rescue team. They'll be there by morning. Just stay inside, stay warm, and..." The radio died suddenly. I looked up to see frost creeping over it, covering the dials and speaker. One of the Ice Mothers stood in the doorway, her hand outstretched toward the radio. "No!" "More voices from outside," she said softly. "They don't understand. They'll try to take you away." I backed away from her. "You killed that man. He was just doing his job." "He was trying to take you back to pain," she replied. "We saved you from that." "By killing him? That's not saving, that's..." I stopped, noticing something outside the window, lights in the distance, moving lights. The rescue team was already on its way. The Ice Mother saw them too. Her face hardened in a way that made my blood run cold. "They'll try to take you," she said. "We won't let them." She turned and walked out, her form dissolving into swirling snow as she went. "No!" I ran after her, stumbling into the cold night air. "Don't hurt them, please!" The other Ice Mothers were already on the ridge, including the one that looked like my mother. They stood with their arms raised, like conductors before an orchestra. The wind began to pick up, swirling the snow into a wall that moved toward the approaching lights. I had to warn the rescue team somehow. The snowmobile Kevin had arrived on was still there, half buried in fresh snow. If I could get it started. I trudged through the snow, my legs feeling strangely light. The cold didn't bite at my exposed skin anymore. It felt almost pleasant, like slipping into a cool bath on a hot day. The snowmobile started on the first try. I gunned the engine and took off toward the lights, hoping to intercept the rescue team before they reached the valley. The wind fought, me pushing against the snowmobile with unnatural strength. Snow whipped into my eyes, but somehow I could still see through it better than I should have been able to. After about 10 minutes of fighting the storm, I saw them. 3 snowmobiles with bright headlights cutting through the darkness. I waved my arms frantically, and they slowed as they spotted me. The lead rider pulled up alongside me and removed her helmet. A woman in her 40s with short dark hair and concerned eyes. The name tag on her ranger jacket read, Santos. "Ms. Volkov?" she shouted over the wind. "Where's Kevin?" "You need to turn back," I yelled. "All of you, it's not safe." She frowned, looking me over. I realized how I must appear. Wild-eyed, my hair now almost completely white, my skin glowing faintly in the darkness. "Are you injured?" she asked. "You don't look well." "I'm fine, but you're in danger. There's something in that valley. Something that killed Kevin and will kill you too if you go there." The other two rangers had pulled up now, both men with concerned expressions. One was older, maybe 50, with a graying beard. The other was younger, probably in his 30s. "Ma'am," said the older man, "we need to find our colleague. If he's in trouble." "He's dead," I cut in, "frozen solid, and the same will happen to you if you go into that valley." They exchanged looks. I could see they didn't believe me. "Why don't you come back with us to the station?" Ranger Santos suggested gently. "We can get you medical attention and then figure out what happened to Kevin." "You're not listening to me." I was getting desperate now. The storm was growing stronger around us, the wind howling like a living thing. "They won't let you take me. They'll kill you first." "Who is they?" asked the younger ranger. As if in answer, the snow between us swirled upward, forming a column that slowly took the shape of a woman, my mother, or the thing that looked like her. "Elena belongs with us now," she said, her voice somehow carrying over the wind. "Go back to your world and leave her in peace." The rangers stared in shock. Ranger Santos recovered first, reaching slowly for the gun at her hip. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from Ms. Volkov," she said firmly. My mother smiled, showing those teeth like tiny icicles. "I've stepped away from her once before. I won't do it again." She raised her hand, and a blast of freezing air hit Ranger Santos, knocking her backward off her snowmobile. She landed hard in the snow, gasping as frost immediately began to cover her jacket. "No!" I screamed, jumping off my snowmobile and running to her. "Stop it! Stop hurting people!" The two male rangers had pulled their guns now, but they seemed unsure where to aim. The figure of my mother was already dissolving back into swirling snow, only to reform a few feet away. "Shoot it!" Ranger Santos gasped as I helped her to her feet. The frost was spreading up toward her neck now. The older ranger fired, but the bullets passed right through the snow woman, leaving swirling holes that closed immediately. My mother's face turned sad. "You bring violence to our sanctuary, and still my daughter defends you." She looked at me. "Why, Elenushka? Why choose their cruelty over our love?" "This isn't love," I said, supporting Ranger Santos as the frost continued to spread. "Love doesn't hurt innocent people." "Innocent?" Her voice hardened. "The world took me from you, left you alone. There are no innocents." The younger ranger was trying to start his snowmobile again, but the engine was frozen solid. The older one was now firing shots into the air, maybe hoping to signal for more help. But who could help us out here? "We need to get back to the station," Ranger Santos said through chattering teeth. "This cold, it's not natural." The snow was falling so heavily now I could barely see a few feet ahead. The Ice Mothers were closing us in, creating a prison of swirling white. "We'll never make it through this storm," said the older ranger, giving up on his gun as his fingers grew too numb to pull the trigger. He was right. The Ice Mothers controlled the weather in this valley. They wouldn't let any of us leave. Unless... "I'll stay," I said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at me. "What?" Ranger Santos asked. I stepped away from them, toward where my mother's form was watching. "If I stay willingly, will you let them go? Let them leave safely?" The swirling snow paused, as if considering. Then my mother's face reformed, looking at me with those pupilless blue eyes. "You would choose to stay? Become one of us?" I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes, but only if they go free. No tricks, no storms to stop them. They leave safely." She studied me for a long moment. "You have your mother's heart, always sacrificing." She turned to the rangers. "Go, now, before we change our minds." The storm died down almost instantly. The clear path back down the mountain appeared through the swirling snow. Ms. Volkov, we can't leave you here, Ranger Santos protested, though her body was shaking violently from the cold. You have to, I said firmly. It's the only way you'll get out alive. Tell people the valley is dangerous. Tell them to stay away. But go! I shouted, giving her a push toward her snowmobile. Before they change their minds. The younger ranger had to help Ranger Santos onto her snowmobile. The frost on her clothes was already starting to melt as the Ice Mothers withdrew their influence. We'll come back for you, the older ranger promised as he climbed onto his machine. With more people, better equipment. I shook my head. Don't. Just mark this valley as off limits. Some places should be left alone. They hesitated, then finally turned their snowmobiles around and sped away down the mountain. I watched until their lights disappeared around a bend. You chose wisely, my mother said, materializing fully beside me. They would have died here, all of them. Like Kevin, I said quietly. He sleeps peacefully now. No more worries, no more pain. She touched my cheek. Soon you'll understand the peace we offer. I looked down at my hands. They were almost completely transparent now, glowing blue in the darkness. I could feel the change spreading through me, turning my blood to ice water, my heart to a frozen stone. What happens now? I asked. Now you complete the transformation. Become one with us. Then we'll find more lost children, more souls who need the protection only a mother can provide. More victims, you mean? She shook her head. Not victims, family, the way it should have been. I thought of Kevin, frozen, in his kneeling position, of Ranger Santos, who would have died if I hadn't made this bargain, of how many others would come looking eventually. The Ice Mothers had to be stopped, but how could I fight them when I was becoming one of them? As we walked back toward the valley, I felt the camera still hanging around my neck. My trusty Nikon, my connection to the outside world, to humanity. An idea began to form, a desperate, probably hopeless idea, but it was all I had. I want to document it, I said suddenly. My transformation, for the others who will come. My mother looked at me curiously. Why? So they'll understand, see the beauty in what we are. She seemed pleased by this. Yes, they should see. They should know that we offer love, not fear. Back at the shelter, I set up my remaining film, prepared my camera equipment with hands that glowed brighter by the hour. The Ice Mothers watched with interest as I worked. What they didn't notice was that I was also gathering other things, matches, lighter fluid from my camp stove, my notebooks filled with the dried grasses and twigs I'd collected for fire starters. All the while I felt the cold seeping deeper into my bones, not painful anymore, but soothing, calling me home to the ice. My thoughts were getting slower, more dreamlike. Soon, I would be one of them completely. I had to act before that happened, before I lost the last of my humanity. But first, I had one more picture to take. Morning came with an unnatural stillness. No wind, no bird sounds, just perfect, beautiful silence. I stood outside the shelter, looking at my reflection in a sheet of ice. I barely recognized myself anymore. My hair was completely white now, moving slightly even without wind. My skin was blue-white, and I could see right through my hands to the bones beneath. My eyes had lost their pupils, becoming pale blue pools like the Ice Mothers. I was almost one of them completely. I could feel their thoughts now, brushing against mine like snowflakes. Their memories of lives long past, their endless frozen love. And yet, a small part of me still burned warm, a tiny flame of humanity that refused to go out. It's time, Elenushka, my mother said, appearing beside me. The other Ice Mothers stood nearby, watching with those empty blue eyes. Just let go of the last of your warmth. Join us fully. I nodded, turning to look at the shelter. I just need to get something first, for the photograph. She smiled, pleased that I was still thinking about documenting my transformation. Of course. Inside the shelter, I gathered everything I had prepared. the lighter fluid, the matches, my notebooks, and the remaining film canisters. All things that would burn hot and fast. My plan was simple, probably foolish. Fire melts ice. If I could create a fire big enough, maybe I could weaken the Ice Mothers. Maybe I could free Kevin and any others they had trapped over the years. But I knew I wouldn't survive it. I was too far gone, too much a part of them now. If they melted, I would too. I was okay with that. Better to die human than live as whatever they were making me. I slipped the matches into my pocket and picked up my camera. Then I walked back outside where the Ice Mothers waited. "I want to take one last picture," I said, "of all of us together by the ice sculptures." They seemed pleased by this idea. They had started to trust me, to believe I had accepted my fate. We walked to the clearing where the Ice Children played their endless frozen games. Kevin's kneeling form had been moved here too, arranged like he was watching over the children. A protector. The Ice Mother's twisted idea of family. I set up my tripod carefully, arranged the settings on my camera, asked the Ice Mothers to stand in a group behind the ice sculptures. "Mother," I said, looking at the thing that wore my mother's face, "stand in the middle. This picture needs to show the love between us." She smiled that icicle smile and took her place. I set the timer on the camera and walked over to join them. As I stood beside my mother, I slipped my hand into my pocket, gripping the matches. With my other hand, I reached for hers. "I've missed you so much," I said softly. Her cold fingers wrapped around mine. "We'll never be separated again." The camera flash went off, capturing our image. I knew it would be the last photograph I ever took. "There's something I need to tell you," I said. "Something I never got to say before you died." Her eyes softened. "What is it, my darling?" I leaned close, as if to whisper in her ear. Instead, I pulled the matches from my pocket and struck one against the box. "You taught me that true love sometimes means letting go," I said, as the match flared to life. Before she could react, I pressed the burning match against her icy skin. It sizzled and she shrieked, a sound like cracking ice. I pulled the lighter fluid from my other pocket and sprayed it over her and the nearest Ice Mother. "What are you doing?" she screamed, her face contorting with rage and pain. "Saving you," I said, striking another match, "and everyone else." I tossed the burning match onto the lighter fluid. Flames erupted, blue-white and hot. The Ice Mothers screamed in unison, a sound like a winter storm compressed into a single moment. They tried to back away, but I grabbed my mother's arm, holding her in the flames. Her icy skin began to melt, water running down like tears. "Let go," she hissed, her voice changing, becoming less human. "You'll die too. You're one of us now." "Not yet," I said, though I could feel the heat burning me too, turning my translucent skin back to pink human flesh that blistered and burned. Not completely. The other Ice Mothers were coming for me now, their faces twisted with fury. But the fire was spreading, melting the snow around us, creating a barrier of slush they couldn't cross easily. I kept my grip on my mother as we both burned. Her face was melting, revealing something beneath that wasn't human at all. Something ancient and cold and lost. "You could have been safe forever," she said, her voice gurgling as her throat melted. "Safety isn't love," I told her, even as pain wrapped around me, squeezing the air from my lungs. "Love is letting go when holding on hurts others." I thought of my real mother, dying in that Siberian prison. How she had let me go so I could live. That was real love, not this frozen prison of safety. The fire was spreading faster now, feeding on the lighter fluid and the strange ice that made up the mothers' bodies. It raced across the clearing toward the ice sculptures. As the flames touched Kevin's frozen form, something amazing happened. The ice didn't just melt, it transformed. His body glowed from within, like a candle inside blue glass. Then the ice fell away completely, and he collapsed to the ground. He was alive, coughing, shivering but alive. The same thing was happening to the Ice Children sculptures. As they melted, real children appeared, the lost children of the 1932 expedition, preserved somehow all these years. They looked confused, disoriented, but very much alive. The ice mothers were melting faster now, their screams fading to whimpers, then to silence. My mother's form collapsed into a puddle at my feet, leaving nothing solid behind. I fell to my knees, the pain of burning and melting overwhelming me. I had been right. I was too far gone. The fire that freed the others was destroying me too. Kevin crawled toward me, his face pale with cold, but his eyes clear. "What happened?" he gasped. "What did you do?" "Broke the spell," I managed to say, through lips that were melting like wax. "Get the children out of the valley. Don't come back." He stared at me in horror as my skin ran like candle wax, revealing the ice beneath that was rapidly turning to water. "What about you?" he asked. I shook my head, feeling it start to come apart. Too late for me. With the last of my strength, I pointed to my camera on the tripod. It had somehow escaped the flames. "The film," I whispered. "Show people. Warn them." Then the heat took me completely, melting away what the Ice Mothers had made me into. But unlike them, I felt no fear, no rage as I dissolved, only peace. I had chosen this, chosen humanity, even if it meant death. As my vision blurred and my body melted away, I thought I saw a figure standing at the edge of the clearing. A woman in a ragged prison uniform, her dark hair streaked with grey, her face gaunt but beautiful. My real mother, not the ice copy. She smiled at me, a warm human smile, and held out her arms. I let go and flowed toward her like water returning to the sea. The editor's note. The following text was found with the camera and film of photographer Elena Volkov, who disappeared in Glacier National Park in 1979. The final roll of film in her camera contained a single photograph. 3 figures that appear to be made of ice, standing behind what looks like ice sculptures, and a 4th figure, presumably Volkov herself, in mid-transformation between human and ice form. The other figures in the photograph appear to be melting, their faces contorted in what might be pain or rage. The children and ranger mentioned in this account were never found, though a search party did discover evidence of a large fire in the Eastern Valley, along with Elena's equipment and this written testimony. The valley has since been closed to the public, officially due to avalanche dangers. Some rangers still speak of strange sounds in that valley during winter storms, voices singing lullabies in Russian, and the laughter of children who never seem to grow older. They say if you listen carefully on the coldest nights, you can hear a woman's voice warning you to turn back, to choose love that frees rather than love that imprisons. They say her voice sounds like ice melting in spring, like winter finally letting go. Morning came with a thick fog hanging over the hollow. I woke stiff from sleeping in the truck, my neck aching. The quiet felt heavy, like the air before a storm. I started work that day, clearing brush around the old church. Hard work as always cleared my head. Back in the mines we had a saying, "Sweat washes away fear." So I sweated, pulling weeds and moving fallen branches until my muscles burned. Around noon, I took a break to drink from my water jug. That's when I saw the creek, winding through the trees about 50 yards from the church. The water looked clear, sparkling in the patches of sunlight that broke through the fog. It reminded me of the day I baptized my daughter, Sarah. The memory hit me hard. "You should have been there, Tom," I whispered, thinking of my brother. If I hadn't been at that revival meeting, if I'd been at the mine instead. I pushed the thought away and went back to work. By sunset, I'd cleared enough space to set up my tent near the church. Better than sleeping in the truck again. Over. The next few days, I worked on the church roof. The old building creaked and settled as I hammered, like it was getting used to being touched again. Sometimes I'd stop thinking I heard someone whispering, but there was never anybody there. On the fourth day, I ventured into the main house. The door stuck, then gave way with a groan. Inside, dust covered everything like a grey blanket. Old. Furniture sat rotting. A table, some chairs, a couch, with springs poking through. In the corner stood a bookshelf with a few books still on it, their pages yellow with age. I picked one up. It was a journal, the leather cover cracked and peeling. I opened it carefully and read the first page. June 12th, 1924. We have found our holy place. Pastor says the Lord will come when we are ready to receive him. We must prepare the way. The handwriting was neat, but pressed hard into the paper, like the writer was angry or scared. I flipped through more pages, but stopped when I saw a drawing of a circle with strange marks inside it. Below it, someone had written, "The Circle of Ascension, 5 sacrifices to open the door." My stomach turned. I closed the book and put it back, wiping my hands on my jeans like I'd touched something dirty. That night in my tent, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump, an owl hooting, branches scraping against each other in the breeze. I opened my father's Bible to Psalm 23, reading by flashlight. "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me." I read the words over and over, waiting to feel that warm certainty I used to know. But all I felt was the cold night air and a growing sense that I wasn't alone in this hollow. "Lord," I prayed, my voice barely a whisper, "if you're testing me, give me the strength to pass, and if you're not there—" I couldn't finish. The thought was too big, too scary. In the darkness outside my tent, something moved. A branch snapped. I held my breath, flashlight clutched in my shaking hand. "Hello?" I called, hating how my voice trembled. "Someone there?" No answer came. Just the wind moving through the trees, making the leaves whisper like voices having a conversation I couldn't quite hear. I didn't sleep that night, and when morning came, I found footprints in the mud outside my tent. They weren't mine. They weren't anyone's. The marks looked like someone had pressed twigs into the soft ground, forming the rough shape of feet. I told myself it was just animal tracks, distorted by the rain that had fallen in the night. But deep down, I knew better. Something was watching me. Something was waiting. And the worst part? I wasn't sure if it was a demon come to test me, or God himself, come to judge me for my doubts. The next morning, I drove into town for supplies. Martinsville was small, just a general store, a gas station, and a few houses spread out along the main road. The kind of place where everybody knows everybody. I parked outside the general store and went in. A bell jingled above the door. The man behind the counter looked up from his newspaper, his eyes narrowing when he saw me. "Morning," I said, trying to sound friendly. "I'm fixing up the old place in Shepherd's Hollow. Need some supplies." The store got quiet. An old woman, by the canned goods, stopped what she was doing and stared at me. "Shepherd's Hollow?" the man repeated. "Nobody goes up there anymore." "Well, I do," I said with a smile that felt stiff on my face. "I'm starting a prayer retreat. Name's Isaiah Caldwell. I'm a preacher." The man didn't smile back. "Bill Jenkins," he said. "My grandpa used to talk about that place, nothing good to tell." I grabbed a shopping cart and started filling it with nails, tar paper, and canned food. Bill followed me around the store, keeping his distance but watching me. "What happened there?" I finally asked. "At the Hollow?" Bill sighed. "Back in the 20s, a group moved in, called themselves the Shepherds of the Divine Light, led by a man named Elijah Shepherd. Started as a normal church, then..." He trailed off. "Then what?" "Then they got strange. Started talking about the end times, about how Jesus needed help to come back." Bill leaned closer. "Story goes they killed 5 of their own, called them sacrifices. Then the rest disappeared. Nobody knows if they left or what." or if something happened to them too. Bill straightened up. After that, folks stayed away, said the place was cursed. I wanted to laugh it off, to say that was just superstition, but the memory of those strange footprints kept me quiet. "That'll be $42.16, Bill said when I brought my supplies to the counter. As he was bagging my things, the old woman who'd been listening came up to me. "You drinking the water up there?" she asked, her voice raspy. "From the creek? Some, yeah?" She shook her head. "Don't. That water runs through the old mine. Bad chemicals. Makes people see things." On the drive back, her words kept playing in my head. Had I been drinking tainted water? Could that explain the noises, the footprints? It made sense. More sense than ghosts or demons. But when I got back to the hollow, something was different. The door to the church, which I'd closed that morning, stood wide open. Inside, the pile of debris I'd swept into a corner was spread out across the floor, arranged in a perfect circle. My heart pounded as I stepped into the circle. The wood fragments formed words. "Welcome home, preacher." The same words I thought I'd heard that first day. I ran out of the church, straight to my truck. My hands shook so bad I could barely get the key in the ignition. But I didn't drive away. Where would I go? Back to the town where my brother had died. Back to the congregation that had lost faith in me when I started questioning everything. No, I had nowhere else to go. This hollow was my last chance to make things right with God. That evening, I moved my tent farther from the church, closer, to where I'd parked my truck. I boiled bottled water for coffee, avoiding the creek. As the sun set, I built a fire and sat beside it, Bible open on my lap. The flames made shadows dance on the ground around me. One shadow seemed to stretch longer than it should, reaching toward me like a hand. I blinked, and it was normal again. "Just tired," I muttered. "Just need some rest." I was about to turn in when I heard singing, faint and far away. Like it was coming from inside the hills themselves. A hymn I recognized from my childhood. "Shall we gather at the river?" I stood up, turning in a slow circle. "Hello," I called. "Is someone there?" The singing stopped. In the silence that followed, I heard a soft sound behind me, like wood creaking. I spun around. Nothing was there. Just the dark trees and the old buildings, black shapes against the night sky. I climbed into my tent, zipping it shut, like that would keep out whatever was watching me. I lay down, still fully dressed, my father's Bible clutched to my chest. "It's just the wind," I whispered, "just the water making me imagine things." But as I drifted into an uneasy sleep, I heard it again, that soft, creaking sound, like old wood bending, and it was coming from right outside my tent. A week passed. I worked from sunrise to sunset, fixing the church roof, cleaning the inside, and setting up simple wooden benches. I tried to ignore the strange things that kept happening. Tools that moved when I wasn't looking, whispers that seemed to come from the walls, and those wooden footprints I kept finding in the dirt each morning. The old woman's warning about the creek water made sense. I stuck to my bottled water, hoping the hallucinations would stop. They didn't. Still, I had made progress. The church looked almost normal now. I'd scrubbed away the strange symbols on the altar and replaced them with a simple wooden cross I carved myself. I'd even put up flyers in Martinsville, inviting people to my mountain prayer retreat. I didn't expect anyone to come. Who would drive all the way up here to pray with a preacher they didn't know? But on Sunday morning, I heard car engines grinding up the hill. 5 people came that first day. Martha Weiss, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes who said she was looking for peace after her husband died. Tommy Bradley, a young man with tattoos who was trying to stay clean after years of drug use. Frank Morrison, an older man who wore a wooden rosary around his neck and barely spoke above a whisper. Paul Garrett, a veteran who jumped at loud noises and said he needed to find forgiveness. And Susan Hartley, young and pregnant, who sat in the back row with her hands protectively over her belly. I stood at the front of the church, suddenly nervous. It had been months since I'd preached to anyone but myself. "Welcome," I said, my voice echoing in the small space. "I'm Brother Isaiah. This place, it's not much yet, but it's a start." I opened my Bible, hands shaking slightly. "Today I want to talk about doubt, about how sometimes faith feels impossible." As I spoke, something strange happened. My voice got stronger. The words came easier. I felt a familiar warmth spreading through me. That feeling I used to get when I knew God was working through me. "Even Jesus doubted," I found myself shouting. On the cross he cried out, "Why have you forsaken me? If Jesus can doubt, so can we." The small congregation leaned forward, nodding, some saying Amen. Their eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that should have felt good. Instead, it made me uneasy. After the service, they asked if they could stay. They had sleeping bags, tents. They wanted to keep praying, to be part of what I was building. I should have said no, but the truth is I was lonely, and their faith in me made me feel like maybe, just maybe, God was still listening. So they stayed. We set up a camp near the church. During the day, we worked on fixing up the buildings. At night, we gathered around a fire and prayed. I felt hopeful for the first time in years. Then things started to change. It began with Martha. She woke up screaming one night, saying she'd seen people made of wood watching her from the trees. We calmed her down, told her it was just a bad dream. The next night, Tommy saw them too. Then Frank. Soon everyone was having the same nightmare. Wooden people in old-fashioned clothes, watching us with eyes like burning coals. "It's this place," Paul said one evening as we sat around the fire. "There's something wrong with it." "It's the water," I insisted. "The old mine poisoned the creek. It's making us see things." But I knew it wasn't just the water. None of them had drunk from the creek, and the visions were getting worse. During prayers, Martha would sometimes speak in a voice that wasn't hers, deeper, older. Tommy started carving strange symbols into his wooden bench when he thought no one was looking. Frank's rosary seemed to tighten around his neck, leaving red marks. And me, my sermons changed. I found myself saying things I didn't plan to say, things that didn't sound like me. I'd find myself shouting about sacrifice, about opening doors, about bringing God down to earth. After one particularly intense sermon, I caught my reflection in a window. For a second, just a second, I thought I saw someone else looking back at me, someone with a wooden face and coal-black eyes. That night I couldn't sleep. I left my tent and walked to the edge of the clearing, staring into the dark woods. The moon was high and full, casting silver light through the trees. "What do you want?" I whispered to the darkness. A sound came from behind me, that now familiar creaking of wood. I turned slowly. A figure stood at the tree line, tall and thin, wearing what looked like an old suit, rotted and dirty. But it wasn't a person. Its body was made of twisted branches and sticks, bound together in the rough shape of a human. Where its face should be, two small fires burned like eyes. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It took a step toward me, wood creaking with each movement. Then Martha's voice called from the camp, "Brother Isaiah, is that you?" The wooden figure froze, then stepped backward into the trees, disappearing into shadow. I ran back to camp, my heart pounding. Martha stood outside her tent, looking confused. "I thought I heard someone preaching," she said. "It sounded like you, but different." I didn't tell her what I'd seen. Instead, I led her back to her tent, promised her everything was fine, and then went to my own tent, where I lay awake until dawn, Bible clutched to my chest, listening to the sounds of wood creaking in the forest around us. The next few days were like a fever dream. Our little group kept working on the buildings, but something had changed. We didn't talk as much. Everyone's eyes had dark circles under them, like none of us was sleeping well. And the prayers got strange. Martha started talking about preparing the way during our evening prayer circles. Tommy carved small wooden figures that looked too much like people and placed them around the camp. Frank's rosary beads clicked constantly between his fingers, but I never saw his lips move in prayer. I tried to keep things normal. I gave simple sermons about love and forgiveness, but the words felt wrong in my mouth, like I was lying. And sometimes in the middle of speaking, I'd forget what I was saying. I'd blink and find everyone staring at me, like I'd said something shocking. "Brother Isaiah," Susan asked me after one sermon, her hand on her swollen belly, "what did you mean when you said blood opens the door?" I stared at her. "I never said that." "You did," Paul confirmed, his face pale. "You shouted it 3 times. I had no memory of this. It scared me more than the wooden figure I'd seen in the woods. That afternoon, I went alone to the creek. Despite the warnings about the water, I needed to think. The water flowed clear over smooth stones, but when I looked closely, I could see a faint rainbow sheen on the surface. Chemical runoff from the old mine, just like the woman in town had said. I sat on a rock and opened my father's Bible. The pages fell open to Revelation, with all my father's notes in the margins. He'd been obsessed with the end times, with signs and portents. "What's happening to me, Dad?" I whispered to the book. "What's happening to all of us?" A twig snapped behind me. I turned to see Martha standing there, watching me with eyes that seemed darker than before. "We're being chosen," she said, her voice flat, like they were. "Who?" I asked, though I was afraid I knew the answer. "The ones who came before. The ones who tried to open the door." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We'll do better. We have you to lead us." She turned and walked back toward camp before I could respond. That night, I dreamed of my brother trapped in the mine collapse. But in the dream, the rocks crushing him weren't rocks at all. They were wooden hands, pushing down, squeezing. I woke to screaming. Stumbling out of my tent, I saw everyone gathered around the church. The door was open, warm light spilling. Out though we had no electricity. Martha stood in the doorway, her face a mask of horror. "What is it?" I pushed past her into the church. The wooden cross I'd made had changed. It had grown taller, the wood twisted and gnarled like an old tree, and it was moving, creaking and shifting like something alive. "It's a sign," Tommy whispered behind me. "God is reaching out to us." "That's not God," I said, my voice shaking. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure. Who was I to say how God would appear? Maybe this was what faith looked like when it was real, when it wasn't just words in a book. The next morning, the cross was normal again. Simple, straight wood. I wanted to believe I'd dreamed the whole thing. But the looks on everyone's faces told me I hadn't. Our prayer meetings changed after that. We moved them into the church, gathered around the cross. The prayers became chants, repetitive and hypnotic. I led them, words I didn't recognize pouring from my mouth like water. One night as we prayed, I opened my eyes and saw them. Wooden figures standing in the shadows of the church, watching us. Their bodies were made of twisted branches, their faces crude approximations of human features. Their eyes glowed like embers. I should have been terrified. I should have run. Instead, I felt recognized, seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. "Brothers and sisters," I heard myself say, "we have guests." The congregation turned. No one screamed, no one ran. They stared at the wooden figures with the same strange recognition I felt. "The congregation of wood," Martha whispered. "They've come to join us." The wooden figures didn't speak. They didn't move. They just watched with those burning eyes. After a while, they backed into the shadows and were gone. The next day, Martha didn't come to breakfast. We found her in the church, kneeling before the cross. She'd been there all night, her knees bloody on the hard floor. "It spoke to me," she said when I helped her up. "The cross. It told me what we need to do." "What?" I asked, afraid of the answer. Her eyes met mine, and they weren't her eyes anymore. They were dark and empty, like holes in her face. "Sacrifice," she said. 5 sacrifices to open the door, just like before. That's when I knew we were in real danger. Not from some wooden monsters or haunted buildings, but from ourselves, from what we were becoming. That evening I gathered everyone except Martha, who refused to leave the church. We need to leave, I told them. All of us. This place it's changing us. Isn't that what faith does? Tommy asked. Changes us? Not like this, I insisted. This isn't faith, it's something else. You brought us here, Frank said, his voice accusing. You said God wanted you to build something here. I was wrong, I admitted. The words hurt to say. I thought God led me here, but now I'm not sure. I'm not sure of anything anymore. Doubting again, Brother Isaiah, Paul asked with a smile that wasn't his. After all we've seen. I looked at them. Really looked. Tommy's eyes had that same emptiness I'd seen in Martha's. Frank's fingers were bleeding from clutching his rosary so tight. Paul's smile was fixed and wrong, like his face had forgotten how to make any other expression. Only Susan looked afraid, her arms wrapped protectively around her belly. We should go, she whispered to me. Please, something's wrong with them. I nodded, took her arm, and started leading her toward the trucks. We didn't make it 3 steps before the others blocked our path. No one leaves, Tommy said, not until we finish what they started. And behind them, at the edge of the woods, I saw them again, the wooden figures, watching, waiting. There were more of them now, dozens, standing so still they might have been trees, except for their eyes. Their eyes burned in the gathering darkness like hellfire. That night, they locked us in the old house, Susan and me. The windows were boarded up, the door secured with chains from my own toolbox. We could hear them outside, singing hymns that didn't sound right anymore. The words were the same, but the tune was wrong, twisted. What do they want? Susan whispered, her hands trembling as they rested on her belly. I think they want to finish what the cult started, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. 5 sacrifices, Martha said, to open some kind of door. A door to what? I didn't answer. I didn't know. Maybe heaven. Maybe something else. We tried to sleep, taking turns keeping watch. Around midnight I heard Martha's voice outside, preaching. It didn't sound like her anymore. It sounded older, rougher, like wood scraping against wood. The first sacrifice must be the most innocent, she said, the one who carries new life. Susan's eyes met mine in the darkness. She understood before I did. They want my baby, she whispered. I stood up, anger replacing fear. No one's touching. You or your baby, I promised. I searched the house for anything we could use to escape. In a back room, under rotting floorboards, I found an old metal box. Inside was a stack of yellowed papers and a small rusty key. The papers were drawings. Crude sketches of the wooden figures I'd seen. But they weren't monsters in these pictures. They were people transforming. First normal, then partially wooden, then fully changed. At the bottom of each page was a name and the word ascended. The last page was different. It showed a circle of 5 crosses. On each cross hung a person, with wooden figures gathered around them. Above, a crack opened in the sky, with something reaching down through it. My hands shook as I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. The key didn't fit any door in the house, but it looked familiar. My truck, I realized. It might start my truck. We waited until the singing stopped, until the only sound outside was the wind. Then we pried loose a board from one of the back windows. It was barely big enough for Susan to squeeze through, her pregnant belly making it a tight fit. I followed, scraping my shoulders raw. The camp was empty. Everyone was in the church. We could see light flickering through its windows, hear muffled chanting inside. We crept to my truck. The key fit, but the engine wouldn't start. Someone had messed with it. Cut wires hung loose under the steering column. "We have to go on foot," I whispered, "down the mountain road." Susan looked pale. "I can't walk that far, not like this." "Then we hide in the woods until morning. When they're sleeping, we'll take one of the other cars." We started toward the trees, keeping to the shadows. We almost made it. "Brother Isaiah," Tommy's voice rang out from the church doorway. "Bringing the sacrifice to us?" They poured out of the church, Tommy, Frank, Paul and Martha, but they weren't alone. The wooden figures moved with them, no longer hiding in the shadows. In the moonlight, I could see them clearly for the first time. They weren't just made of wood. They were people becoming wood. Their skin was bark-like in patches, their joints replaced with twisted branches. They wore rotting clothes from another time, suits and dresses from the 1920s. And their faces were the worst part, still human enough to recognize, but changed, hardened, their mouths frozen in silent screams or twisted smiles. "Run!" I pushed Susan toward the trees. "Run!" She ran, faster than I thought possible in her condition. I followed, but something caught my ankle. I fell hard, the breath knocked from my lungs. A wooden hand gripped my leg, fingers digging into my flesh. I kicked free and scrambled up, but they had surrounded me. "Let her go," I told them. "Take me instead." Martha laughed, a sound like branches breaking. "Oh, we'll take you too, brother Isaiah, but first we need her, the innocent blood, then yours, the false prophet. And who will be the other three?" I asked, trying to buy time, hoping Susan was getting far away. "Us," Tommy said with a smile that cracked his face. Wood showed through the split skin. "We'll give ourselves, just like they did before." "But they failed," I said. "Nothing happened." "They lacked true faith," Martha replied. "They doubted at the end." "We won't." I looked at them, really looked. They were changing already. Frank's neck had turned to wood where his rosary touched it. Paul's hands were gnarled like tree roots. Tommy's eyes had gone completely black, like burn marks on wood, and behind them more of the wooden people gathered. I recognized their faces from the old photographs in the house, the original cult members, the ones who had killed themselves trying to open the door. They hadn't died. They'd changed. And now they wanted us to join them. A scream tore through. The night, Susan's scream. They'd found her. Everything happened fast after that. They dragged us to the church. Inside, the wooden cross had grown again, taller than the ceiling, breaking through the roof. 4 more crosses had sprouted from the floor, arranged in a circle. They tied Susan to the center cross. She fought, kicking and screaming. I fought too, but there were too many of them, their wooden hands surprisingly strong. As they pushed me toward one of the other crosses, I felt something in my pocket press against my leg. My father's Bible. Small enough to fit in my jacket. I'd kept it with me, and suddenly I knew what to do. "Wait," I said, "let me pray first. One last prayer." Martha tilted her half-wooden head, considering. "Pray then, false prophet. It changes nothing." They let go of my arms. I fell to my knees and pulled out the Bible. But instead of opening it to pray, I ripped out a page. Then another, and another. "What are you doing?" Martha hissed. I crumpled the pages around me. Then I pulled out my lighter, the one I used for the campfire each night. "Faith requires doubt," I said, remembering something my father once told me. "Certainty kills the spirit." I flicked the lighter. The flame caught the paper instantly. "No!" Tommy lunged for me, but it was too late. Fire spread across the floor, racing up the dry wooden walls of the old church. The wooden people shrieked, a sound like trees in a windstorm. They backed, away from the flames, their bodies creaking in fear. I ran to Susan, used my pocket knife to cut her free. The fire was everywhere now, blocking the door. "The window!" I shouted above the roar of the flames. We ran to the small window at the back of the church and broke it open. I helped Susan through, then followed. Behind us, the church was engulfed. Inside, wooden figures burned, their screams turning to crackling as the fire consumed them. The original crosses, the ones used in 1924, burned the brightest, like they'd been waiting all this time to be cleansed. We ran to the clearing and watched as the fire spread from the church to the house, to the trees where more wooden figures tried to hide. Everything burned. "We have to go," I told Susan. "The whole hollow could go up." We took Paul's truck. He'd left the keys in the ignition. As we drove down the mountain, I looked back. The entire hollow glowed orange against the night sky, like a wound cauterized by fire. I thought of Martha, Tommy, Frank, and Paul. Had they already changed too much to be saved? Or was there still something human in them that the fire had freed? And what about me? How close had I come to changing? To becoming so certain in my faith that I lost my humanity? The answers didn't come. Maybe they never would. But as we drove away from Shepherd's Hollow, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. A small, quiet peace. Not the burning certainty of absolute faith, but something gentler. Something that allowed for questions, for doubt. Maybe that was what real faith looked like all along. 6 months later, I stood at the edge of what used to be Shepherd's Hollow. The spring rains had washed away most of the ash. Green things were already growing back, small plants pushing up through the blackened ground, nature healing itself. Susan's baby had been born healthy, a little girl she named Hope. They were living in Martinsville now. Sometimes I visited, but mostly I kept my distance. Some memories are better left undisturbed. No bodies were ever found in the hollow. The official report said the fire was so hot it destroyed everything, but I knew better. They hadn't died. They had either escaped into the woods or been completely consumed by whatever they were becoming. I didn't preach anymore, not in churches anyway. Instead, I worked construction in a town 50 miles away where nobody knew me. The physical labor kept the nightmares at bay. Most nights anyway. I still had my father's Bible, what was left of it. The fire had burned away half the pages, leaving the cover scorched and warped. I kept it with me as a reminder of what happened when faith became too certain, too rigid. As I stood there, looking at the hollow, I felt a familiar ache in my chest. The old guilt about my brother, about not being there when the mine collapsed. It would probably never go away completely. But it had changed, softened somehow. "I still don't know if you're listening," I said out loud to the empty air. "And maybe that's okay." A breeze stirred the new leaves. For a moment I thought I heard a sound, like wood creaking. My heart raced, but then I realized it was just a tree branch moving in the wind. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I turned to leave when something caught my eye. A small wooden figure, half buried in the soil. I knelt and dug it out. It was a crude carving of a person, like the ones Tommy had made. The wood was blackened by fire, but intact. As I held it, I felt a faint warmth pulse through it, like a tiny heartbeat. I should have thrown it back, buried it deep, or burned it to ash. Instead, I pocketed it. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because some things shouldn't be left behind. Some things need watching. In my truck, I placed the figure in a small metal box next to the journal pages I'd found that night. The box had a lock. I kept the key on a chain around my neck, right next to the cross I still wore. Because that's what I learned in Shepherd's Hollow. Faith and doubt need each other. Like light needs shadow to be seen clearly. Like fire needs darkness to shine brightest. I started the truck and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I watched the hollow disappear around a bend in the road. For a second, I thought I saw something standing at the edge of the burned clearing. A tall, thin figure made of new green branches. I blinked, and it was gone. Just my imagination, probably. Mine seeing patterns that weren't there. But as I drove back toward town, I kept checking the mirror, and I kept one hand on the locked box beside me. feeling its solid weight, a reminder that some questions don't have easy answers, that sometimes not knowing is wiser than being sure. And that night, when I finally slept, I dreamed not of wooden figures or burning churches, but of my brother. We were sitting by a creek fishing like we used to do as kids. He looked at me and smiled. "You did good," he said. "You got out." "But I couldn't save them," I told him. "Any of them." "Some people don't want saving," he replied. "They want certainty more than truth." When I woke, the first light of dawn was filtering through my window. The wooden figure sat in its locked box on my dresser. For a moment I thought I saw it move, just slightly, like it was breathing. Then again, maybe it was just the light playing tricks. Maybe some mysteries are meant to stay mysteries. And maybe that's what faith really is, not having all the answers, but being okay with the questions. My name is Marcus Redwood, 29 years old, and already carrying enough weight to break a man twice my age. The badge on my chest feels heavier with each passing day, like I'm carrying two worlds that refuse to meet in the middle. I sit in my truck at the edge of the Olympic rainforest, rain tapping on the roof like impatient fingers. My service weapon rests on the passenger seat next to my badge. Soon I'll have to choose which one to keep and which to surrender. I can't carry both much longer. 3 weeks ago, I shot a teenager, unarmed. In the dark, he looked just like my younger brother. I keep seeing it in slow motion when I close my eyes. The trajectory of that bullet, chest, heart, silence. His mother's screams still echo in my ears. The department suspended me for excessive force, but the real punishment is the look I see in my own reflection. I run my fingers over the wolf-tooth necklace hidden beneath my shirt. My grandfather gave it to me when I was 12, the same. Summer he taught me to track by reading the stories the earth tells. "Every footprint is a sentence," he'd say in his gravelly voice. "Every trail is a chapter. You just need to learn how to read." Grandfather would be disappointed in me now. Half Quinault, half betrayer, a tribal officer who can't decide which half of himself deserves to survive. The rain picks up as I step out of the truck. I've come to these woods because they're the only place where both halves of me make sense, where I can clean my service weapon while praying in Quinault, mixing gun oil with sacred smoke in a ritual my grandfather never taught me. My police training tells me this forest is just trees and dirt and animals. My Quinault blood knows better. These trees remember the warriors who made their final stand against land thieves. They remember the 1855 treaties that were signed and broken like twigs underfoot. I shoulder my pack and head into the trees. The logging camp is 5 miles in. They reported vandalism, equipment damage, and strange tracks. Normally, they'd call animal control, not a suspended tribal officer, but the regular authorities won't. "Come, not with this storm rolling in. Perfect, I don't want backup anyway. This is something I need to figure out alone." That's always been my problem. Believing I have to solve everything by myself, because trusting others means choosing sides in a war I never asked to fight. As I walk deeper into the forest, the rain whispers through the leaves. To most people, it's just weather. To me, it sounds like weeping. The wind through the damaged trees sounds like dying languages, words I almost understand but can't quite grasp. I touch the scars hidden under my uniform, ceremonial marks from when I was 18, and thought I could belong to both worlds. Now I know better. Now I understand the question that's been haunting me. What's the difference between justice and revenge? Can you serve two masters without betraying both? I'm about to find out. The forest is waiting, and it has something to show me. The deeper I walk into the forest, the quieter everything gets. It's like the trees themselves are holding their breath. The logging roads cut through the woods like scars that won't heal. I know these paths well. They follow the same lines as the old treaty boundaries. Funny how the land remembers what people try to forget. The rain soaks through my jacket as I trudge forward. My boots sink into mud with each step. 5 miles feels a lot longer when you're carrying guilt on your shoulders. By mid-afternoon, I reach the edge of the logging camp. Even from here, I can see something isn't right. The usual sounds of machinery and workers are missing. Just rain, hitting metal, and the low moan of wind through the trees. "Hello?" I call out. My voice sounds small against the vastness of the forest. No answer. The camp looks abandoned. Muddy boot prints lead in all directions. The main office, really just a trailer with a company logo, has its door swinging open. Inside, coffee cups sit half full on desks, paperwork scattered like someone left in a hurry. I check the logbook. The last entry was from 3 days ago. Strange noises all night. Jenkins thinks it's protesters. Security increased. Outside, I find the first sign of trouble. A massive yellow bulldozer sits at the edge of the clearing, its front window shattered. Long deep scratches run down its side, the kind no human tool could make. Not clean enough for metal, too precise for an animal. Or at least, that's what my police training tells me. The Quinault part of me sees something else. The marks follow a pattern my grandfather once showed me. Warriors' marks, meant to warn trespassers. My hand instinctively touches the wolf, tooth under my shirt. The sky darkens as I examine the rest of the equipment. Every machine shows the same damage, systematic, purposeful destruction, not random vandalism. This was a message. I find a set of tracks leading away from the camp, into the older part of the forest, where the trees still stand tall. The footprints confuse me. Some look human, heavy boots with treaded soles. Others are different, larger, deeper, like nothing I've seen before. My grandfather's voice whispers in my head. The earth tells stories to those who listen. These tracks are telling a story I'm not sure I want to hear. I follow them anyway, moving away from the camp and into the dense old growth. The rain picks up, becoming a solid wall of water. The storm the Weather Service warned about is rolling in fast. In a day or two, these roads will be washed out. No way in or out. Night approaches quickly under the heavy clouds. I find a sheltered spot beneath a massive cedar and set up my small tent. As darkness falls, the forest changes. Daytime sounds fade away, replaced by the night voice of the woods. I try to radio out, to let someone know I've reached the camp, but all I get is static. Through the white noise, I swear I can hear my grandfather's warnings, though he's been dead for 5 years. The old ones are still here, the static seems to say. They never left. I clean my service weapon by flashlight, my fingers moving automatically through the familiar ritual. The smell of gun oil mixes with the cedar and rain. I whisper prayers. In Quinault, words that feel strange and natural at the same time. Something howls in the distance, not quite wolf, not quite human. I freeze, the half-cleaned gun in my hands. The howl comes again, closer this time. Then another answers from a different direction. They're communicating, using patterns that sound strangely familiar, like the radio codes we use in the department. Sleep doesn't come easy that night. In my dreams, the teenage boy I shot looks at me with my grandfather's eyes and asks, "Which side are you on, Officer Redwood?" I don't have an answer for him. I never do. Morning comes with no relief from the rain. I pack up my wet tent and continue following the strange tracks. They lead me deeper into the old forest, away from the logging roads and into places where the trees grow so thick they block out what little daylight filters through the clouds. My stomach growls. I eat a protein bar from my pack while walking. The tracks are getting harder to follow. The rain is washing them away, but there's something else strange happening. When tracks disappear in the mud, I find broken branches or disturbed moss showing the way. Almost like someone wants me to follow. Around noon, I find something that stops me cold. In a small clearing stands a logger's chainsaw, but it's not just abandoned. It's arranged carefully with other tools, a hard hat, gloves, safety glasses, in a pattern that sends chills down my spine. It's a warrior's display, the kind my grandfather showed me in old photographs from tribal museums. When warriors of the past prepared for battle, they would arrange their weapons and protective gear this way as an offering and a statement of intent. But who would know how to do this? Who would mix modern logging tools with ancient traditions? I take pictures with my phone, though I know there's no signal to send them. Force of habit from police work, document everything. A twig snaps behind. Me. I spin around, hand going to my weapon. Nothing there. But I feel eyes on me. Watching. Judging. "Hello?" I call out. "This is Officer Redwood. If anyone's there, I just want to talk." The forest answers with silence. I continue on, but now I'm noticing other things. Claw marks on trees too high for any normal animal. Footprints that start as boots and then change mid-step to something else. And everywhere, signs of someone who knows the forest, as well as I do, better even. By late afternoon, the storm intensifies. Rain comes sideways now, and wind whips through the trees like angry spirits. I need to find shelter before dark. I spot a small cabin ahead, one of the old Forest Service emergency shelters. Its door hangs open, banging in the wind. Inside, it's basic but dry. A small wood stove, a table, a couple of bunks with thin mattresses. I get a small fire going in the stove. The heat feels good against my damp clothes. Outside, darkness comes, early with the storm. I try the radio again, but now there's not even static, just dead air. As I'm heating water for my freeze-dried dinner, I hear it again, howling, but closer now, much closer. I kill my flashlight and move to the window. At first, I see nothing but rain and darkness, then movement at the edge of the trees. Something large, walking on two legs, then dropping to all fours. I catch glimpses of what looks like traditional regalia mixed with tactical gear. My heart pounds in my chest. I'm seeing things. Has to be, the stress, the isolation, the guilt, they're making me imagine things. Then it steps into a patch of clearer visibility and my blood freezes. It stands at least 7 feet tall. The body is like a man's, but covered in thick fur. The face is a nightmare mixture of human and wolf. And around its neck, tribal regalia I recognize from my own family's ceremonies. But there's more. What looks like modern body armor, tactical webbing, and its eyes, yellow and glowing in the darkness, are fixed directly on the cabin, on me. I stumble back from the window, drawing my weapon with shaking hands. "This isn't real," I whisper to myself. "This can't be real." Outside, the howling starts again. But now I recognize the pattern. It's military, search and surround tactics. I learned them in police training. They're coordinating, cutting off escape routes. There's more than one of them out there. A voice calls out, deep and rough, like stones grinding together. It speaks in Quinault, using words I barely remember from my childhood. Then it switches to English. "Marcus Redwood," it calls. "Tribal police officer, badge number 1855, son of John Redwood and Sarah Collins, grandson of Thomas Redwood. It knows me. Whatever it is, it knows everything about me. We've been waiting for you," the voice continues. "Time to choose your side." A massive shape crashes against the cabin. Door. The whole building shakes. The door holds, but barely. I aim my weapon at the entrance, trying to control my breathing. "Who are you?" I shout. "What do you want?" The answer comes in a growl that sounds like my grandfather's voice. "Justice." I don't sleep that night. How could I? I sit with my back against the wall, gun trained on the door, listening to the creatures circle the cabin. Sometimes they speak in Quinault, sometimes in English. They know things about me, things nobody should know. By morning, they're gone. Or at least I can't hear them anymore. The rain has turned into a full-blown storm. Water leaks through the cabin roof in 3 places. I put my empty food containers underneath to catch the drips. I need to get back. To the logging camp, radio for help, find other people. When I step outside, the forest feels different, heavier, like the air itself is watching me. I keep my gun drawn as I try to retrace my steps, but the rain has washed away most of the trail. I'm not lost. I know these woods too well for that, but I'm not sure I'm heading in the right direction either. The storm has changed everything. Familiar landmarks look strange and threatening. After an hour of walking, I realize I'm being herded. Fallen trees block certain paths. Deep puddles force me to take detours. Every time I try to head toward the logging camp, something stops me. I'm being guided deeper into the old forest. This is ridiculous, I say out loud, trying to calm myself with the sound of my own voice. I'm imagining things, but I know I'm not. Something intelligent is out there, something that knows these woods better than I do. By midday, I reach a clearing I've never seen before. At its center stands an old-growth cedar, massive and ancient. Its trunk is scarred with what look like bullet holes. Around it, arranged in a perfect circle, are 7 stones. This is a sacred place. I can feel it in my bones. As I approach the tree, I notice carvings in its bark, names and dates. I recognize some of them, warriors who fought to protect. Tribal lands, men from my own family tree, and there, near the bottom, freshly carved, Marcus Redwood, followed by today's date. My hands shake as I touch the carving. The wood is still damp where it was cut, the edges fresh. What do you want? From me? I shout into the forest. The answer comes as a memory. My grandfather's voice from long ago. There are 2 kinds of justice, little one. The justice of men, written in books and enforced with guns, and the justice of the land, written in blood and bone and memory. Someday you'll have to choose. A branch snaps behind me. I whirl around, raising my weapon. A man stands at the edge of the clearing. No, not quite a man. The same wolf-human creature I saw last night, but in daylight, the details are clearer. Its face has features I recognize. The strong jawline, the deep-set eyes. It looks like the old photographs of my great-great-grandfather. It wears a mixture of traditional ceremonial gear and what looks like military equipment. Around its neck hang police badges, dozens of them collected like trophies. We stare at each other across the clearing. My gun trembles in my hands. You won't use that, it says. Its voice is deep with a growl underneath the words. Not against your own blood. What are you? I ask. We are the ones who never surrendered, it says. The warriors who died defending what was promised. The guardians who protect the boundary between worlds. You're not real, I say. But my voice lacks conviction. It laughs, a sound like rocks tumbling down a hillside. More real than the badge you carry. More real than the lies you tell yourself. It takes a step forward. I take a step back. Stay where you are, I warn. Or what? You'll shoot me like you shot that boy. Quick to pull the trigger when you're scared, aren't you, Officer Redwood? The words hit me like physical blows. How does it know about that? We've been watching you, it says, as if reading my thoughts. Watching you choose their ways over ours, their laws over our justice. More shapes emerge from the trees. More wolf warriors. I count 6 of them, forming a loose circle around me. Each one wears different tribal regalia, different modern equipment. Some carry traditional weapons, stone clubs, bone knives. Others have modern tactical gear. What do you want? I ask again, my mouth dry with fear. The leader, the one with my great-great-grandfather's face, steps closer. We want you to see, it says, to witness, to judge, and then to choose. Thunder cracks overhead. The rain comes down harder. The storm will keep you here. The leader says, no roads out, no communication, just you and us and the forest. For 10 days you will witness our justice, then you will decide which world you serve. And if I try to leave? All 7 creatures make the same gesture. drawing a claw across their throats. The forest has been patient, the leader says. It has watched its children betray it for too long. Now it demands an accounting. They back away, melting into the trees with impossible silence. In seconds, I'm alone again in the clearing. Only the carved name on the tree proves I didn't. Imagine the whole thing. I check my phone. No signal, as expected. My radio is still dead. The storm has cut me off, just like they said it would. I'm trapped here with them for 10 days, and I have a terrible feeling that people are going to die. I make my way back to the cabin as darkness falls. The wolf warriors are out there watching. I can feel their eyes on me, but they keep their distance, testing me, waiting. Sleep comes in short, restless bursts. Every sound jerks me awake. The rain on the roof, the wind in the trees, the occasional howl that might be wolf or might be something else. Dawn brings a brief break in the rain. I use the opportunity to gather more firewood and check my surroundings. The cabin sits on a small rise, giving me a decent view of the surrounding forest. In the distance, I can just make out the logging. Camp, something's wrong. Smoke rises from where the main office should be. I grab my pack and head toward the camp at a run, slipping and sliding on the muddy trail. It takes me almost an hour to get there. By then, the rain has started again. But it can't hide what's happened. The office trailer is a charred shell. Equipment lies scattered and broken. And there, near what used to be the main gate, is a body. Bill Crenshaw. I recognize him from previous visits to the camp. The site manager. A big man with a bigger mouth. Always complaining about tree huggers and Indian superstitions. His body is torn apart. At first glance, it looks like a bear attack. Deep claw marks, terrible wounds. But as I examine him more closely, I see the truth. The wounds are too precise, too deliberate. This wasn't an animal attack. This was an execution made to look like one. I search the rest of the camp but find no other bodies. Just boot prints leading away in all directions. The workers fled. On the hood of a truck, arranged carefully, are Crenshaw's personal items. His wallet, keys, cell phone, and his logging. Permit. The official document is slashed to ribbons. Another warrior's display. I check his phone. No signal, of course. I hear movement behind me and spin around, drawing my weapon. A woman stands at the edge of the clearing. Young, white, wearing high-end hiking gear that's seen better days. She raises her hands when she sees my gun. Don't shoot. I'm unarmed. I lower my weapon slightly. Who are you? What are you doing out here? Rachel Green, she says. I'm with Forest Defenders Alliance. We've been monitoring this logging operation. Her eyes dart to Crenshaw's body, and she pales. Oh my God, what happened to him? You tell me, I say, not holstering my gun yet. Your group has a history of sabotaging. Logging equipment. She shakes her head vigorously. Non-violent protest only. We document illegal logging and file reports. We don't hurt people. She swallows hard. That looks like a bear attack. It wasn't a bear, I say. Rachel takes a step back. Then what? Where's the rest of your group? Back at our camp about 2 miles east. I came to take photos of the new clear cut. She glances nervously at my badge. Are you going to arrest me? I finally holster my weapon. For what? Looking at trees? I'm more concerned with getting people out of these woods safely. There's something dangerous out here. Her face shows relief. The storm's supposed to get worse. Roads are already washing out. We were planning to hike out tomorrow. You should. Leave now, I tell her. All of you, it's not safe. Because of whatever killed him? She nods toward Crenshaw. Yes. She studies me for a moment. You know what it is, don't you? Before I can answer, a howl cuts through the rain. Close. Too close. Rachel's eyes widen. What was that? Go back. Onto your camp, I say urgently. Get your people and head east. Stay on the main trail. Don't stop for anything. But now! She turns and runs, disappearing into the trees. I make my way back to the cabin, keeping my gun ready. The forest feels alive around me, watching and waiting. The wolf warriors are letting me see what they're doing. This is part of their test. Night falls. The storm intensifies again. Wind howls through the trees, bending them like angry spirits. I try to radio for help one more time. Nothing. A scream cuts through the storm. Human, female, coming from the east. Rachel. I grab my flashlight and run toward the sound, stumbling through the darkness. Rain lashes my face. Branches tear at my clothes. The scream comes again, weaker this time. I find her in a small clearing. She's on her back, rain washing over her pale face. Her chest is torn open, the same precise wounds as Crenshaw. But she's still alive. Her eyes find mine as I kneel beside her. It wasn't a bear, she gasps. It was people. But not people. Save your strength, I say, pressing my hands over the worst of the wounds. Blood seeps between my fingers. I'll get you help. She grabs my wrist with surprising strength. They said I was protecting the wrong things, trees without honoring what's beneath. Her grip loosens. Her eyes go blank. I close them gently, rain mingling with tears on my face. Standing, I shout into the storm. Why her? She was trying to protect the forest. A voice answers from the darkness, my great-great-grandfather's voice. She cared for trees, but ignored the blood in the soil. She fought for a forest, but forgot the people who died for it. Her justice was incomplete. I peer into the rain, but see nothing. This isn't justice, I say. This is murder. Is there a difference? The voice asks. When your people came for our land, was that justice or murder? When you wear that badge and enforce their laws on our territory, is that justice or murder? I have no answer. Go to the old cedar, the voice commands. See what true justice looks like. I stumble back to the cabin, Rachel's blood washing from my hands in the rain. Sleep is impossible now. Dawn finds me sitting by the cold stove, my service weapon in one hand and my grandfather's wolf-tooth necklace in the other, two symbols of power, two kinds of justice. I know now that the wolf warriors are killing people to force me to choose. They're creating a trail of bodies, each one representing a choice between my badge and my blood. And I'm running out of time to decide. Morning brings a strange stillness. The rain has stopped, but dark clouds still hang low over the forest. I check my weapon, pack some supplies, and head toward the sacred cedar. I need answers. The forest feels different today. Watchful, waiting. Every shadow might hide one of the wolf warriors. Every sound could be their approach. I reach the clearing with the ancient cedar tree around noon. The 7 stones still form their perfect circle around it, but now there's something new, a police uniform, torn and bloody, spread out on one of the stones. I approach slowly, hand on my weapon. The name tag is still attached to the uniform, Santos. My partner, Jim. My throat tightens. Jim Santos had been my partner for 3 years. He wasn't a bad cop, just disconnected from the tribal community. He never understood why I struggled with my dual identity. A badge is a badge, he'd say. Doesn't matter what color the hand is that wears it. Now his uniform lies like an offering on sacred ground. I look around the clearing, my heart pounding. Where is he? I shout. What did you do to him? The leader of the wolf warriors steps from behind the cedar. In daylight, the resemblance to my great-great-grandfather is even more striking. His yellow eyes fix on me. He came looking for you, the creature says, bringing more badges, more guns to our land. He died still believing in their justice. He was my friend, I say, my voice breaking. He was their tool, the warrior growls. As you have been, he enforced their laws on our people. Laws written by those who stole this land. I draw my weapon, aiming it at the warrior's chest. This ends now. The creature doesn't even flinch. You won't shoot me, son of my blood. You know the truth in your heart. What truth? I demand, my gun hand steady despite my fear, that there are two kinds of justice in this world. One written in books by the conquerors, the other carved in the land by those who came before. You carry both in your blood, but you can only serve one. More wolf warriors emerge from the trees, forming a circle around me, 7 of them matching the 7 stones. They move with unnatural grace, part human, part animal, wholly terrifying. You've killed 3 people, I say. That's not justice, that's vengeance. Is there a difference? The leader asks, echoing his words from before. I think of the teenage boy I shot, of his mother's screams, of the guilt that's been eating me alive. Yes, I say quietly, there's a difference. The leader tilts his head, studying me. Perhaps you are beginning to understand, but your education is not complete. He gestures, and 2 warriors drag something from the trees, a body. They throw it at my feet. Elder Thomas Clearwater, the tribal council member who recommended me for police training, who told me I could bridge both worlds. His body bears the same ritualistic wounds as the others. Why him? I ask, my voice hollow. He was one of us. He taught you to trust their system over our wisdom, the leader snarls. He believed we could live in their world without losing ourselves. He was wrong. Anger flares in me, hot and sudden. So you kill anyone who doesn't agree with you? Anyone who tries to find a middle path? There is no middle path, the leader says. There is only truth or betrayal. I level my gun at him again. Then I guess I'm a betrayer. For the first time, uncertainty flickers in those yellow eyes. You would choose their justice after seeing what they've done to our land, to our people? I choose neither, I say, not their justice or yours. Both are broken. The wolf warriors growl, moving closer. My finger tightens on the trigger. A new voice calls from the edge of the clearing. Marcus, is that you? I turn slightly, keeping the warriors in my peripheral vision. Lisa Yamamoto, forest ranger. I'd met her a few times before at interagency meetings. Lisa, get back, I shout. It's not safe. She steps into the clearing, her ranger uniform soaked from the rain. I've been looking everywhere for people. The roads are washed out, radios dead. I found bodies at the logging camp and... She stops, finally seeing the wolf warriors. Her face goes white. What? What are they? She whispers. The past, I say. The part we tried to forget. She reaches slowly for her sidearm. Marcus, step away from them. No, Lisa, you need to leave. Now. The leader of the wolf warriors growls. Another one who thinks badges and protocols can control the forest. She must learn. No, I shout, but it's too late. 2 warriors leap across the clearing with impossible speed. Lisa fires twice, the shots echoing through the trees. One warrior stumbles but doesn't fall. The other reaches her, claws extended. I fire at the attacking warrior, hitting it in the shoulder. It howls in pain but doesn't stop. Lisa screams as claws tear into her. I run toward her, firing again and again. The warriors scatter, dragging their wounded member with them. Lisa lies on the ground, blood pooling beneath her. I kneel beside her, pressing my hand to her wounds, knowing it's useless, just like with Rachel. Protocol, Lisa gasps. Follow. Protocol. Then she's gone. I stand slowly, covered in her blood, and face the wolf warriors who have regrouped at the edge of the clearing. 4 dead, I say, my voice deadly calm. 4 people who were just doing their jobs. Jobs that destroy our land, the leader says. Jobs that enforce the lie. And what about my job? I ask. Am I next on your list? The leader steps forward. That depends on you, son of my blood, on the choice you make. I look down at my badge, now spattered with Lisa's blood, then at the wolf-tooth necklace hanging outside my shirt. I'm tired of choosing, I say, tired of being torn in half. Then become whole, the leader says. Join us. Become a guardian of both worlds, neither fully human nor fully spirit. A bridge between realms. And if I refuse? The leader's eyes narrow. Then you die as a betrayer. Thunder rumbles overhead. The rain begins again, soft at first, then harder. I need time, I say. You have until moonrise, the leader replies. Come to the sacred cedar when the moon touches the trees. Come alone. Come ready to choose. The wolf warriors melt back into the forest, leaving me alone with Lisa's body and a decision that will change everything. I carry Lisa's body back. To the ranger station we pass along the way. It feels wrong to leave her in the forest. I lay her gently on a cot inside, cover her with a blanket, and close her eyes. 4 dead now. 4 lives cut short, because I came to these woods carrying questions I was afraid to answer. Back at the cabin, I clean my gun one last time. The familiar ritual calms my shaking hands. As I work, I think about the choices that brought me here. The badge that never quite fit right on my chest. The heritage I never fully embraced. My grandfather once told me, a man with 1 foot in 2 canoes will eventually fall into the river. I've been falling my whole life. I think about the teenage boy I shot in the dark with his hoodie up. He looked just like my younger brother. I fired before I really saw him, before I knew he was unarmed. I've been telling myself it was training, instinct, procedure, but maybe it was something else. Maybe it was the part of me that had learned to fear my own people. Outside, the day fades. Clouds break just enough to let me know the sun is setting. Soon the moon will rise. Time to decide. I leave my badge on the table. Keep my gun holstered at my side. Whatever happens next, I want to face it as myself. Not as Officer Redwood, not as the grandson of Thomas Redwood. Just as Marcus, trying to find a way to be whole. The forest is quiet as I walk to the sacred cedar. No bird calls, no insect sounds, just my footsteps and the drip of rain from leaves. The wolf warriors are out there, watching, waiting. The clearing looks different in the twilight. The ancient cedar seems to glow with an inner light. The 7 stones cast long shadows. There, the base of the tree, someone has built a small fire that burns despite the dampness. The smoke rises straight up, unaffected by the wind. I stand at the edge of the clearing, waiting for the moon. It appears between clouds, a silver disk climbing above the treetops. As its light touches the highest branches of the cedar, the wolf warriors step from the shadows. 7 of them forming a circle around me. Their eyes glow in the darkness. Their breath fogs in the cool night air. The leader steps forward. My great-great-grandfather's face looks solemn in the moonlight. The time has come, son of my blood, he says. What is your choice? I take a deep breath. Before I answer, I need to know. The people you killed, was that justice or revenge? The leader growls low in his throat. Is there a difference when the crime has lasted for generations? When the theft continues every day? They took our land, our language, our children. They cut down our sacred trees to build their homes. They poison our rivers to mine their gold. And they use people like you, our own blood, to enforce their will upon us. That doesn't answer my question, I say. Their deaths were necessary, the leader says, to show you the truth, to force you to choose. I nod slowly. I understand now, and I've made my choice. I step toward the fire at the base of the cedar. The flames cast strange shadows on the faces of the wolf warriors. I choose neither side, I say, and both. Angry growls rise from the circle. That is not an option, the leader snarls. You must choose. No, I say firmly. The problem is that we keep choosing sides, keep dividing the world into us and them. My badge or my heritage, their justice or yours. I pull out my service weapon and place it on one of the 7 stones. I can't keep living torn in half, I continue. but I won't choose one part of myself over another. I am both tribal and officer, both past and present. The leader's yellow eyes narrow. Pretty words, but words don't change reality. Our world is dying under their boots. Our ways are being forgotten. Then we find a new way, I say. One that honors the past without being trapped by it. One that embraces the future without forgetting where we came from. I step into the center of the circle, next to the fire. Its heat feels strange against my skin, not burning but changing. I choose to be a bridge, I say, between worlds, between times, between kinds of justice. The leader steps toward me, massive claws extended. Brave words from a man surrounded by warriors who could tear him apart. I stand my ground. If you kill me, you're no better than the people who stole your land. Just another killer using power to force your will on others. The leader stops, his claws inches from my throat. The forest needs protectors, I say, not avengers, guardians who understand both worlds, not warriors trapped in the past. For a long moment, no one moves. The fire crackles between us. The moon climbs higher in the sky. Finally, the leader lowers his hand. You speak with two tongues, but one heart, he says. Perhaps there is wisdom in what you say. He turns to the other warriors. They growl and snarl, clearly unhappy, but none challenge him. The forest has waited over a century for justice, the leader says. It can wait a little longer to see if your way bears fruit. Relief floods through me. Thank you. But the leader isn't finished. He turns back to me, eyes glowing brighter. But you cannot walk between worlds as you are, he says. To be a true bridge, you must be transformed. Before I can react, all 7 warriors surround me. Their claws dig into my shoulders, not drawing blood, but holding me in place. The leader places one massive hand on my chest, over my heart. Do you accept this burden freely, he asks? To be neither fully human nor fully spirit? To protect both worlds without fully belonging to either? Fear grips me. But underneath it, I feel something else. Something I haven't felt since I was a child, learning to track with my grandfather, belonging. I accept, I say. Pain explodes through my body. I feel like I'm being torn apart and put back together. The fire rises around us, engulfing all 8 of us in flames that don't burn. I see flashes of the past, warriors fighting to protect their land, treaties signed and broken, forests falling to make way for towns. I see my great-great-grandfather, not as the wolf warrior he became, but as the young man he was, proud and fierce and determined. I see the future too, myself walking between worlds, neither fully human nor fully other, a guardian of boundaries, a protector of both forest and town, a bridge between kinds of justice. The pain peaks, then fades. The fire dies down. The wolf warriors step back, watching me with new eyes. I look down at my hands. They look the same, but feel different, stronger, connected to the earth in ways I can't explain. It is done, the leader says. You are changed. Not as we are, but enough to walk our paths. Enough to hear the forest speak. Enough to bring true justice to both worlds. I touch my chest where his claws had rested. My skin is unmarked, but I feel the change deep inside, like waking from a long sleep. What happens now? I ask. Now you begin your real work, the leader says, protecting what needs protection, healing what can be healed, finding justice that serves both worlds. And the killing stops. The leader's eyes hold mine. For now. As long as your way shows promise, as long as you remember your oath. One by one, the wolf warriors melt back into the forest until only the leader remains. We will be watching, son of my blood, he says, always watching. Then he too is gone, leaving me alone in the clearing with the dying fire and the 7 stones. I stand there until dawn, feeling the forest around me in ways I never could before. hearing voices in the wind that I'd forgotten how to listen for, sensing connections between all living things that my police training never taught me to see. When the sun rises, I head back to the ranger station. I have bodies to account for, a story to tell that no one will believe, a new path to walk that no map can show me. I am Marcus Redwood, not half tribal and half officer anymore. Something new, something whole, a bridge between worlds. The rain has finally stopped. The forest smells clean and new. And for the first time since I shot that teenage boy, I feel like I know who I am. My grandfather was right. A man with one foot in two canoes will fall into the river. But sometimes, if he's lucky, the river itself will transform him into something that belongs to both shores and neither. Sometimes the fall is just the beginning.